than air pollution is pretty much the responsibility of the local community. Are you going to allow all these trucks to go on your streets? Are you going to deal with the light, with the sound? These are all different kinds of pollution, but the air pollution goes beyond that municipality. It goes everywhere, as we all know. So it's a huge issue. And the other thing about it right now is that, gee, great employment, $15 an hour, benefits. So with all the people that are out of work right now, there's tremendous incentive at the county levels to approve these things, to even push these things. And once they're up, they're up. So
yeah, there's a lot of public demand for the jobs too, of course.
Sure.
Yeah. It would be nice if Amazon would source locally so that they could say, okay, here's this thing. And I know that could be difficult with pricing and stuff, but they have a lot of money, so they could try to balance out the price. So that would encourage people to use it as a marketplace and then actually purchase things nearby so they could have the convenience of the delivery and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be a great solution where they would be supporting local businesses, supporting buying local and not having something that could be made, right there, shipped. I think that would be a great solution. And I think if they balanced out the cost of that, that would be great. And I think they could easily do that.
All right. Well, there seems to be a break in the conversation. At the moment, it is just past 4 o'clock. We have 20 people, which on my screen is a nice screen full of participants. More will, I'm sure, be adding in. People straggle into this event, whether it's live or virtual. But I think this is a good critical mass to get going. So, welcome to the 100th Sustainability Salon.
Yay, Maren! Yay, congrats.
Yeah, it's been like over 8 years of salons every month. So there are some, let's see, I don't have to tell you where the bathrooms are and the situation with the food, but I hope that you guys are all going to be enjoying lovely snacks and perhaps beer or wine or tea. This is some Chinese tea from one of Yale's graduate students, and this is some honey that I put in the tea from my bees. And so I'm enjoying that right now, and we'll see what happens later. So I hope you are all set up with yummy things to have, and I heard some kitty meow, and that's lovely. I see we have several of our speakers already with us. That's terrific. Oh, there's the kitty. Hi there. That is a kitty. I should note to folks that kitty is on the other side of the world in Qatar, in Doha, Qatar, with a former and sometimes Pittsburgher named Ilana, who used to come to salons when she was in Pittsburgh, but now she can come again because we have a pandemic. One of the silver linings, and we have my sister in Western Massachusetts, my uncle and cousins in Eastern Massachusetts, and somebody else needs me to send them a Zoom link. And so, so this salon, let me send that person the Zoom link. Try to, give me a second. This is, okay, I've sent that to him. All right. we will have a time sort of in the middle when there are, when we're ready for a little break from the talks. Some of the folks have slides, some do not. But we, this salon came about. There's many different origin stories for different salons. Sometimes they pop out of a conversation. Sometimes they pop out of an issue I've been hearing about, and I go looking for the right people to talk about that issue. Salon. I also want to give a nod to this being the 100th salon. I want to give a nod to Mark Dixon, who's there 2 down and 2 over on my screen. I don't know about yours, with his amazing mustache, but only a little goatee so that he can seal his mask well. These days, he's been a speaker. Folks who have come to salons, he's almost certainly a familiar face because he's often filming the salons or speaking at the salons or facilitating discussions. And he's just so good at all of those things that, and it turns out that salons came about. Well, I conceived of salons sort of following a conversation that I'd had with Mark. I had taken a bus to some event and he gave me a lift home. Nowadays it's the opposite way because he's gone car free. Yay, Mark and Christy. And I had him in for tea, and we had this amazing, wide-ranging conversation. And it was really felt important. And I said, there need to be more people at this table. And then sustainability would be the framing concept, and salon not too far off from what we're doing with conversations and knowledgeable people. So I want to give him a nod for that, give him a nod for all his help through most of this 100 salons. He's not around for everyone, but he's been amazing. And if I had a board, he would be the other person on it. But I just haven't done it very well. So I'm not very official in nature, even though I serve on a whole bunch of boards and steering committees. So this salon came about through a conversation that I was having with Helen Gerhardt, who is one of the main coordinators of an ongoing series that has been going since mid-January, a big discussion group about how to get going and what would be involved in a Green New Deal for our region. It's called the Green New Deal Discussion Group. There's 2 left in the series, and who knows where we'll go after that. And I can let Helen, was really, I think it was kind of her brainchild. No, well, I'm sure it came about in conversations between Helen and other folks. And then I sort of have been helping a little bit, and I'll be Zoom hosting it tomorrow each day, and I help make some connections, because that's another thing I do a lot of, is make connections. But at any rate, Helen is another one of these people, somewhat like Mark, that is really good at seeing connections and putting them in really great words. Both of you two, who are right next to each other on my screen. Let me unmute.
Maren, you froze.
Maren, you froze on us. Are you still there?
I am.
Right where you were in the middle of complimenting Helen on her awesomeness.
Keep going,
Okay. Okay. Anyway, you two are both awesome, and you're totally different in your styles and what you're working on, but you both have that certain something of synthesizing ideas and seeing ways to move forward with them. So, so I was having a conversation. Helen and I were having a conversation, I think after a previous Green New Deal thing, perhaps, and we.
It's frozen again.
Oh darn! I'll go somewhere closer to the internet. Okay, how's this? Is this better? Am I frozen? You guys are moving, so I'm probably not frozen.
You are moving. We can hear and see you.
Yeah, I'm moving, making Carla
It's
dizzy.
better.
Sorry, Carla.
Yeah.
It's
but
better.
I'm coming out here for at least a while I'm talking, and then I may go back into.
I'm not looking at the screen while you're walking around. It makes
Thank
me
you, thank you. Okay, so here I am in the out of doors, but in a more direct line to the internet thing. So is that better? I'm about to turn it over to Helen anyway. So we were talking, I don't know, Helen, you may remember where the conversation was going. I'm sure I have notes on it, but of course I don't have them in front of me right now. And I should probably just shut up and get out of your way. But actually, first I just wanted to make sure, since there may be some new folks to Zoom, just a couple of notes. One is in your upper right, there's a toggle between speaker view and gallery view. And you have control over that most of the time, unless someone is sharing the screen. And so gallery, you see everybody.
This is Marin.
Someone else just registered and get in. I will just have to let her in after Helen starts talking.
There's the chat from Doha.
Actually, Marin, why don't we give a pause for you to be able to just
Well, actually, that
let
was in
everybody
a text. No, that wasn't in a text.
Her husband is on the faculty at CMU, and they have the CMU satellite campus in Doha.
Yeah.
So he's
You can also pin the video, which will keep the speaker on your screen, even if someone else is talking.
Chimes in. Yeah, there's that too.
Keep it from bouncing back and forth.
Mhm.
There's 3 little dots in the corner of each person's screen, and it can say
Pin.
pin video. If it's available, you can use that. Not everyone has it. Phones don't have it.
Okay, I'm trying to reply. All right, I sent her the register link. Okay, so anyway, so much has been going on around the pandemic, and it is turning everyone's life upside down. And some people are, I mean, we are privileged. We have this space that we can be in. I have tons of work to do, gardening and building, and am finding ways to do activism through meetings. And even this last week, we had a distance protest, which maybe in the chatting later we can chat about. We talked about it in the beginning, but we did a Burma shave style protest outside the cracker plant to draw attention to Shell's bad behavior, bringing workers back, and resisting closure in the first place. So anyway, so we are privileged. Neil is a professor. He's working hard at doing science and advising students and collaborating and writing papers and proposals and reviewing other people's papers and proposals. And so he's keeping quite busy, and he draws an income, but there's so many people that don't. So there's so many people that either don't have jobs or have to work and be vulnerable all the time and are mostly getting paid crap salaries or wages to do so. So there's a lot of people who are really in difficult straits. And so there are several initiatives around our region which are putting people with excess funding or time on their hands and reasonably good health and ability to take care with distancing, and so volunteers and funding and donated goods to put them together. And one of our speakers has been doing this forever, well, for 5 or 6 years, 412 Food Rescue. But there's other efforts that have just sprung up recently. And so we're going to feature several of those today and talk about how it affects people. I think I have about 5 or 6 different initiatives represented. And because, let's see, I'm finding Helen vanished off my screen. Is she still with us, or did she fall off the connection?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay. I think I don't know. I couldn't spot you. So there's multiple screens now if you're in gallery view. So Helen is not only good at synthesizing all these ideas, but she's worked, previously she was working for Just Harvest, which is a food access organization, and she can tell you a little bit about that. And now she works for Lawrenceville United, and that's doing some pandemic-related mutual aid. So there's a mutual aid aspect to most of what Just Harvest does, because it's getting food to vulnerable people by different means. One of the cool programs that I think not long after I had met Helen somewhere, she was at a farmer's market pioneering this method where people who get food stamps.
Pioneering, no.
What?
Implementing. Not pioneering, implementing.
Implementing. Well, it was the first that I've seen. Yeah. But I mean, people who get food stamps nowadays is through a debit card, but farmers markets were just working in cash because there's the farmer, and what do they want with a credit card and dealing with all that business? So she, I guess, pioneered in Pittsburgh anyway. Nope. Okay. Anyway, I remember being very impressed with this idea because they would exchange, you could buy tokens with a credit card or a food stamp card, and that made the farmer have to deal with less cash. They would just build up a stack of these wooden tokens by the end of the day, and they would turn them back in. And it also removed the stigma of using food stamps from the people, because a lot of people would spend tokens, whether it was because they wanted to use a credit card or, and not carry that much cash, or because they were using food stamps. And that was really instrumental in giving people who were on food stamps access to such better, fresher food than they otherwise would have been. So now she's working with Lawrenceville United, and one of their projects is to get resources to people, and I should really shut up and get out of your way now.
No
Oh,
worries.
except I said that, and then so organized at this. Okay, I wanted to let folks know there's a mute button in your lower left corner, which if by and large, most people should be muted unless you have something to say. Mark Dixon, the aforementioned fantastic Mark Dixon, is going to be helping facilitate discussion after each talk and during each talk if it's important enough to interrupt. So there's also a chat button on the bottom of your Zoom window, which if you click on that, then you can put a message to either the whole group or to a single person, which you do within their little window. You can direct a message basically to Mark, who will navigate when he will keep stack, as it's called, so giving sort of priority to whose question should go next, which may be partly the order it was asked in, or it may be some other order that makes more sense. So Mark will navigate whether people get interrupted. He and I have the power to mute or unmute anyone. So by and large, just keep yourself muted. If you want to speak for a question, say that to Mark in the chat, and then he or I will unmute you at that time when he deems it appropriate to do that. And sorry, this is all so complicated. Oh my goodness. Aw, thank you, Mark.
That's awesome.
So, okay, so I just wanted folks to know about the chat window, the mute and start and stop video. And thank you for clapping, Carla. There's a clap button somewhere. I think it may be under more. There's a hand raise button, which is another way to do it. I think that's in the if you open up the participants window and you select yourself. No, how do you get, anybody remember how you get that raise hand?
Which one? Oh, yeah, in the participants more, and then.
Oh, I guess I'm the host, I can't raise hand.
Yeah, you can't raise your hand as host.
Yeah, on mine, it's under reactions, which is right on across the bottom. And
oh, perfect. Oh, thank you.
More.
That's
cool,
it.
And that depends on, there are only two choices, thumbs up and clapping.
Clap. Yeah, that's not the same as raise hand. There's a raise hand.
A raise hand
I think is in participant window. It's just I don't see it because I'm the host.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Mark.
Yeah, you don't have it.
So Okay, so, all right, after, and this, Helen, what I have perpetrated upon you is something which Neil refers to as mental whiplash. Because I keep saying, and I'm going to turn it over to Helen, and then realizing I didn't say something. And now I have to go check. So I will now disappear into a picture.
But before you go, I just want to double
Yes.
check. I have 10 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, we're usually pretty loose. So if 10 minutes is good, that's good. If you need more, yeah. I mean, the fact that we're a little late now, it's sort of elastic. It just usually is an elastic in later dinner. But see, we don't have to. We can have dinner.
Well, so I'm going to set my
Whenever we're
timer
hungry.
for 10 minutes because
Okay.
I can go on and on and on and on, and I, you know, having some structure is good.
Okay, and let me make sure.
And we do have time for questions and answers, Maren said.
Yes,
so
yes.
like about 10 minutes
Yes.
after for questions.
Sure, we're recording.
So-
Okay, and we are recording. Yes. Okay.
I do see this pandemic, or a lot of folks see, a lot of scientists have been predicting this and other pandemics as really inevitable, a result of our destruction of our ecology. And, you know, our ways of relating to each other as fellow creatures, you know, human to human, and with our larger network of neighbors on this enormous tree of life that we're part of, it really has gone out of balance because so many of the formal systems that we use, whether it's money or the ways that we organize the distribution of our work, our labor, our creativity, what we give to each other, it's not really paying attention to the fact that we are part of this very interconnected ecology. I grew up all over the country in a whole bunch of different kinds of communities. My mom's very careful to say she was a flower child, not a hippie. But we lived in a whole range of different cultures, from a commune in Summertown, Tennessee. It was very big at that point, to with small charismatic Christian communities. So she swung from far left to far right, what we normally think of as in terms of ideology. As a kid, what I was struck by is this incredible drive to help each other. You know, in all of those very different many political systems, these communities, people were so dedicated to helping members of their group. Part of the ways that they formed themselves as groups had this shadow side too, the other, right? The villains. So when I was living with the communes, the villains were the conservative Christian right groups that I then went to live with, who vilified the commies. And our larger history of the US, so our larger history of the interaction of all these different cultures, ethnic histories, racial histories, it just so often does not, and I would say even like socialism versus capitalism, there is not enough attention to the fact that we are in fact in communal relation with a much larger host of living beings. And we are now faced with a natural predator. We have, COVID-19 is a virus that is challenging us in a way that really no other disease has. And part of how we have survived as a species, it is through our social connection, through our mutual assistance, aid. We are now faced with a virus which presents in so many different ways, so many different symptoms. There are so many ways that it is transmitted. We are not sure how long it lasts in people, whether people can be, it seems that people can be reinfected. So it has made so clear as we face this incredibly unusual challenge that our current social structures are not functional. We don't have economic or social systems at this point which can really allow us to adapt in a way that allows for general health and well-being. It has made so clear the vast inequities that capitalism, that this drive for profit, for individual gain, we have a medical system which cannot respond adequately. We cannot, in this country at this point, we cannot get together a testing system. But I mean, in the midst of this crisis, right, we also see people springing to action all around us. We see long-term support networks that have been there all along, right? All these people who've been working hard to build connections, not for profit, but for their own sake, that have been acting in ways that strive for fairness, equity, justice, mutual cherishing of each other's differences and valuing of the various strengths and skills and identities that make for healthy human ecology. So alongside the deep unhealth and inequity and dysfunction, there have also always been these aids, these mutual expressions of solidarity on both the practical, the emotional, and the spiritual level. So as the pandemic hit, I am once again awed, as I have been awed, over the past, my decades of living, by the ways that people strive to respond to crisis by helping each other. I do think that because this crisis is so much more challenging in terms of the kind of long-term, this is almost certainly going to be a long-term situation. The likelihood of a virus at the earliest, they're saying like 18 months to make it really truly available. But it has laid bare so many of the causes of inequity that caused the crisis. So right now we are dealing with a polyglot of different sorts of structures, from purely volunteer spreadsheets where people put on their needs and other people respond, to the interactions of a federal government that is deeply dysfunctional in terms of its present leadership, but there are these structures that were set up, such as in the New Deal, Social Security, in the war against poverty. There were all these structures to provide aid. The SNAP program, the Food Bucks program that subsidizes fresh, healthy food at farmers markets. There's this incredible network of local, state, and federal programs and structures that do indeed distribute our wealth in ways that can be very beneficial, but have been decimated by decades of neoliberalism and economic and political structure, which is giving so much power to a tiny little elite that exploits our what we contribute to society, our wealth, our energy, for the Bezos Amazon structure that uses its workers in incredibly abusive ways, to all the corporations that are often masquerading as nonprofits, right? Like UPMC. Because the unhealth of that structure has been revealed. Unlike the structures that so often appear after like Hurricane Sandy or Katrina or a major disaster that is temporary, I think that this pandemic is forcing all of us to think about the structures that we set up, the mutual aid networks that we set up, must not only provide the basic practical needs that we and those who are most vulnerable need, but it gives us an opportunity to build networks that can push for deeper systemic change that can lead toward systems which we have examples of, systems which have been far more successful. Like if we look at the Nordic countries, Finland, Iceland, Denmark, where democracy is far more distributed, where campaign financing doesn't determine results of elections, where people have established deep interconnected mutual aid networks on the local level, and they also expect that and have achieved that in terms of their federal structures, in terms of every level of government. So those systems, of course, have deep flaws and deep inequities, and in no way are they utopias, but there is an honesty and openness about addressing many of their deepest flaws. And I think that we must, at this point, as we establish these mutual networks, look to those examples and be moving away from models of charity, but of true mutual solidarity. And when we think of solidarity, thinking of being part of that larger ecology, reframing the ways that we solve problems as being part of that larger interconnectivity. So I was going to talk about the buddy system for Lawrenceville United. I would say that at this point, honestly, it's just a bare beginning. You know, volunteers were called upon to help. We began with seniors, people who at that point were felt to be those who were most at risk. And we had a whole call list in an Advantage program that these folks are members of, and reached out by phone to find out their needs and then matched them with the hundreds of volunteers that have leapt into action. We are helping, that group is helping distribute food that is coming from the federal government, coming from like the USDA is giving a major grant to 412 Rescue, coming from the food that organization has rescued from all these restaurants and grocery stores that leapt to provide food that was otherwise going to waste. But I would say that this model at this point is not sustainable unless we change the larger, deeper systems that led to this pandemic. And so my personal hope is that these structures can be not only a way to provide each other mutual aid and to organize our labor and our various talents and perspectives, but could also be used to push the larger formal systems, which are really leading toward much greater crisis as the climate basically breaks down as our ecology breaks down, because we are refusing as a larger system to adapt, not just be social with our own group, but with our larger system. So I'm going to go back to gallery view, and Maren, I hope that that's the kind of synthesis that you were hoping for. It's
Sorry, that was I was muted. That was really helpful. So let me, I think the next person I had in mind. So first off, does anybody, I think Barbara had a,
Yeah, this is just a procedural question, which is that chat appears to be disabled. So if I did have an actual question, I wouldn't be able to put it in the chat. I don't know if everyone else is having that problem or not.
Mark did at first, but then I sent him a chat and it seemed to be working.
You sent me a chat and I couldn't respond.
You can't respond.
So I sent you emails. I sent Mark email.
Oh.
So that it's just a procedural item. It's not.
Well, it's significant because if I sent you a chat saying, "Can you say something about your question in chat?"
and
then you can't chat,
yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Some people could text me and I would see that because as long as I don't have it on full screen.
Email, but whether you check that while Helen's speaking, I hope not. So.
Well, I have been checking for things with salon in the subject line.
Oh, I said Zoom anyway.
Right. So
that will get fixed.
That is okay. Chat is here, so we can't put our questions in it. So,
don't.
That's
But Maren, your comment about pandemics and climate change came through.
Yeah, you can send as a host.
Yeah, I don't understand because other people have chatted since the beginning.
It's funny, Maren, I also see only your comments about pandemics. I don't see anybody else's comments.
Well, there's no other comments. There was a comment Diane made, but I think that was before you got on, and one never sees the chat before one gets on. Anybody else, just put some chat in. Mark is testing.
I can see Mark's comment, but I can't reply to it.
Yes, me neither.
Chat disabled, it says at the bottom.
The chat is disabled.
I will, let me see, there's some dots over here. Participant can chat with everyone publicly and privately. I don't know why that was like that.
Okay now.
Hey, so
it
now
should be okay now.
Yay,
Thank you, Mark.
it's fixed.
It's back. Yay.
Okay, I just looked and I saw some dots and I followed the dots.
Yay. Okay.
And thanks to Mark who sent me a note, but I don't know. Anyway,
Great.
There we go.
Thank you.
Yes, I followed the dots. Okay, so back to Barbara had a question or comment or something. Oh, that was your question.
Yeah, I'm surprised that I was unfamiliar with your work, Helen, and I'm really happy to hear your perspective and thank you. And yeah, it's like it seems really general, and so not what you're specifically doing, but the framework I think is very general but very helpful at the same time. That's it.
Okay, and also in terms of people who are here while we are being procedural, there's a couple people who show up as phone numbers, 661 number and locally, and a faraway 331 number. Do you want to say hi and who you are? I will unmute you since phones can't always unmute themselves. Actually, you can. I think it's something like #6.
You do it.
So who have we there at 646-331 blah blah? We have 2 phone numbers. They might just be a duplicate of a person, but I'd like to attach a name to those numbers.
Sean is at 646.
Who is?
Sean as a duplicate.
Oh, okay. So Sean is doing sound through that. Okay. Sean Moundus? Sean Moundus?
There is only one Sean here, right?
Okay.
I'm reading from the chat.
Oh, there it is. Okay. And then Okay, and then I will mute Sean again. Okay, that's 646. And then there's a 412-661 number.
That's me, Maren.
There's 30 people on the call. Is that Diane? Who?
Susan Krotek.
Susan. Okay, great. I just don't.
I'm here.
Okay, I'll label you with your name, and then if you speak.
Thank you.
And you can, I believe that you can unmute yourself by saying either *6 or #6.
Thank you.
Yeah, or text me or something. You should have an email. Okay. I will let us now return to any cogitation people are having with Helen's remarks. Mute.
So I see Molly has asked a question. So for the buddy system, right now, one buddy is being placed in relationship with one person who's in need. And I myself have some concerns about this model, honestly. I think that, so I actually have a little buddy system in my neighborhood. And one of the things that I've been hearing both from the seniors I talk to and in my own neighborhood is people's concerns about pushing volunteers to do things that are dangerous. And so then if that person cannot fulfill all that person's needs or is not being able to follow through, they're hesitant to communicate that. And so I'm thinking, like, I'm actually reading about other mutual support networks. An evolution I would like to see is having little pods of people that can not only help like one centered person in need, but help each other as well. So this is actually something we're going to be talking about at work. But I think that we have really good models of other support networks functioning in that way. And I do think that establishing real relationship over time is really important. Getting to be able to know the people, either the one-on-one relationship or the little pod. And of course, this is incredibly challenging right now because we can't be together physically. And so we have to establish new ways of building relationship that where there aren't professional responsibilities. They're all volunteers at this point, right? So encouraging each other to be real and open about both what we need and holding each other accountable, that is something that we're going to need practice at. And I think that because we are at a distance, I think we have to be very thoughtful and intentional in kind of setting up structures of checking in with each other and inviting critique. How can I help you better? What are your needs? And then being willing to really express our own needs as well. So there's like this very basic set of social skills that I think in some ways have atrophied because of our current economic system and the fact that we work in these gigantic networks at high levels of abstraction from each other. And when I am calling the seniors on the phone, there is such an incredible need to connect because they're not being able to go out and see their friends. And so to be real and open and vulnerable with each other, to bring our senses of humor and concern for each other into a new system of mutual support, to hold each other accountable while also being easy with each other's limitations. I think that if we made it more like our current many of our current social safety nets work now, right? Where there's case managers, right? And there's a clear professional relationship, but that person almost never, quite often, they never get the chance to know the person that they are helping as a real person. So right now, I'm not the person who started this buddy system for Lawrenceville United, but I deeply agree with setting up an ongoing, longer-term relationship between the person that is needing the most help and the person who's giving the help. I think if it's going to be sustainable.
Is it still annoying you? Could you still hear it? Okay.
If it's going to be sustainable, then the helpers are also going to need help. I think that there will need to be more mutual solidarity for the long haul.
Yeah, thanks for that, Helen. And I mean, the idea of having it be a group of people, I mean, just thinking about the longevity of those relationships, I really love what you're saying about that support not being a one-way thing, that it's really like the idea is relationships where you lean on your community and everyone in your community can lean on you too. That just seems like a critical piece, and it's really exciting work.
Yeah, and I actually want to give credit to Mike Elk, who is a labor reporter. So you know him? He's the first person that brought up that idea. So yes, and then I think now we need to bring it into our systems and look at other systems that are doing that. Let's see, I see a question from Ilana Wires. Oh, first, let's see here. There are some comments that have been up further. I'm just going to read a couple of them. So Sean, to everyone, interdependence is so important. I want to acknowledge the role of animal agriculture as contributing to pandemics. And let's see, from Sean. Sean, do you want to say more about the role of animal agriculture? Are you there? Do you want to unmute yourself and just expound upon what you were saying here?
Let me unmute him because he's on a phone. Oh, no, he's unmuted now. Okay.
I just unmuted him.
Oh, okay. Faster than me, Mark. Okay, Sean, are you there? He may have stepped away. But I
am here. Can folks hear me?
Okay, yes. There you go.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, so just briefly, thinking of the wet markets, though that's not the only place where diseases can really get widely distributed, thinking about the role of animal agriculture in that sense with the zoonotic diseases. So that's just what I meant by that.
Yeah, and with people, I mean, smallpox happened because people were living right in together with their cows. So, and they had the cows because the cows were useful for labor and meat and milk. And so domestic animals where people are working, I mean, and nowadays most of it is a different kind of proximity. It's workers in factory farms and slaughterhouses, and as we've been hearing recently, meat packing plants, where it wasn't transmission between the meat. I mean, we're not saying that COVID came from the meat packing plants, but you're working intimately. So if there was diseased meat that was capable of jumping to humans, a meat packing plant would be a great place to do it. We can't even keep the humans from transmitting to each other in a meat packing plant. So
exactly, yeah.
And factory farming, where the animals are close together and unhealthy, is prime zone. And in the chat earlier, I commented about how pandemics are probably going to be inevitable, more of them due to climate change. One way being that tropical diseases will spread out over the globe because insects can survive, various vectors can survive. And And we've seen some of that already with Ebola coming into this country, but also ancient viruses that are in the permafrost from some ancient times are being released. And so it's not unlikely for, well, and it is unlikely, but it's possible for animals. So suppose there's a mammoth carcass and some carnivore or omnivore scavenger comes to it and eats it, and it's carrying some weird virus that the scavenger can get, and then the scavenger comes in contact with other animals, and somehow, as I say, it's not likely, but it's possible. And things that, even if there's a small probability of something, if it has high stakes, you should still give it some attention. And so that possibility of all, people have found thawing mammoth carcasses and stuff. So it's only reasonable that other different kinds of animals, and maybe, there used to be tropical climes in what are now frozen tundra. I mean, from the fossil record and pollen records, the whole globe used to be quite tropical. So maybe there's monkeys or something that are very close, or bats, or mammals that could have a disease that would transmit and wind up with humans, or even transmit to some kind of animal and wipe out that kind of animal, which has a vital role in the food web, in the ecological system. So anyway, I don't want to digress too far into that, but I agree that animal agriculture, the way most of it is practiced now, is asking for trouble.
Thanks.
As well as necessarily cruel.
There's another question from Susan Krotek. The Department of Human Services is giving out cash grants. I spent a few hours assisting an individual to receive this grant. His financial need is real, yet he did not qualify. This infrastructure to assist people with dire financial needs remains dysfunctional. What can our activist community do to hold accountable the structures that have been assigned to help people in need? This was a problem before the pandemic. It continues to be very problematic for people who are enduring the greatest needs, and the needs are still going unmet under this current system. So the Department of Human Services, when I was working at Just Harvest as a food stamp specialist, they had gone, we as a nonprofit were really doing the work that had previously been handled by the Department of Human Services. Over many years of neoliberal austerity, right? Those structures of support had been cut and cut and cut again.
Yeah, this is Susan. I'm interrupting you because I'm critical care. It's Margaret underneath Susan's name.
I thought that was you in the picture.
Yeah, because I didn't get on the Zoom fast enough. I didn't register, so she emailed me with the Zoom.
That's
but
fine.
The reality of the public health services and these human rights in Hazelwood, I've been desperate to help people there for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm finding the austerity measures in the public health services for the last 30 years has been a real impediment to anything I have been trying to do. And it's heartbreaking for me, but I'm seeing it at a higher edge of need. And I really hope that, we can do something practical from this group. You can teach me how to advocate, because I will call everyone I have to get a pipeline, to get a point person, to change the structure, to insist, because the terror that we're facing in terms of public health right now, we have been on the front lines screaming our heads off with exhaustion over the last 30 years trying to change this. This is a personal experience for me. I'm insubordinate because I go in people's doors and say, we're not doing enough. That's why I'm an artist now and not a nurse. You get kind of tired of fighting it. I'm a frontline person when it comes to this, and we have not changed it. We can't tolerate that anymore. I hear you. I hope you hear the strain. I can't tolerate it anymore because I'm seeing people suffer directly.
Yeah.
There are so many people afraid right now. There's an increase in crack going on. There were shootings. recently in Hazelwood, we see the stress factors,
Yep.
and there's nobody there, really. Allegheny, County Health Department, where there's no tracking. How many people have died at Kane? 19? People are going in and out. They are not being checked. At this point, I've called people, but I need your help. That's why I'm breaking in, because I can't tolerate what's going on. The inadequacies of that system.
Yeah, there's all these like elaborate forms of documentation which are required for, that's something that when I was a food stamp specialist, right? Okay, so like one caseworker would have 1,000 people that they were supposed to be responding to.
Totally.
Right?
It's so overjammed.
Yeah. When my brother came to live with me, we went to, he has a disability, we went to get food stamps. And this woman was running back and forth, like she was sweaty. Her hair was like all over the place. She was so kind, but so overloaded. She said, this system, this card is crap. It's going to fall apart in like you'll use it about 10 times and it's not going to work anymore. So you'll have to enter the number. Back in the back, all these papers are she was so honest with us about what chaos it was, because
this is what the common man doesn't understand, and we're expecting something of the infrastructure that they can't deliver because they have been underfunding it. And I think we're a brilliant community on this Zoom call right now. And what I'm saying is that is a pandemic of dysfunction that's been 30 years old.
Yes.
So we as activists, help build a narrative, compel this change, because even the Heinz Endowments knows about it. Everybody that is funding this, I wrote a 20-page report last year on the face of what we needed, and it was inconvenient to read because it was too long. That's the response they give people like me. When you call for the help, you've done your needs assessment, you've done 2 years of work on the front lines for this community, and the response is absolutely inadequate. And I don't know how to change this system, and I'm really about envisioning. I am a visionary as an artist. I'm a philosopher. I think we could do better. I don't know who to contact at this point in the infrastructure of our public health that is all of us at the same time confronting with the power of our voice.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think things are just falling apart. Right?
Thank you for listening.
Okay, I think we should move on.
Yes, we should.
As another great sort of network of networks is the Pittsburgh Mutual Aid Network that the Thomas Merton Center has been taking the lead on. And we are fortunate to have with us today the executive director of the Thomas Merton Center. Somewhere in one of these windows is Gabriel McMorland. There you are.
Hey.
So many windows. And again, if we run out of time, I want to keep moving so that everybody gets a chance to have, each topic, each initiative talked about. But the Zoom call will be open afterwards. You can, pull up a chair, grab your supper, and keep chatting. So if we don't get to your question, please, come later. And also conversation can happen within the chat window if a speaker wants to address something. And then everybody will be able to see that. And it will be archived with the video. So, okay, Gabriel, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Maren. This is, and thanks for 100 sustainability salons with putting down roots. That is such a valuable thing to share with everyone and to bring people together around. I'll just talk for just a second, and then Simone will put up slides, and then I'll talk more. And it'll all probably be less than 10 minutes, maybe. So I'm Gabriel McMorland. I work at the Thomas Merton Center, which a lot of you have heard of. We're a peace and justice center, and we've been working towards systemic change around peace and human rights and environmental economic justice for longer than I've been alive, for 48 years. And so we've been supporting this Pittsburgh Mutual Aid network that I'm going to talk about today. And some other organizations that were part of launching it include One Hood, and the DSA and JOLT, Jews Organizing for Liberation and Transformation. A lot of people came together, and I think it does, you'll see why it fits into the Merton Center's history of working for systemic and cultural change. So we're gonna start the slides now. Cool. All right, so first thing to know is that Pittsburgh Mutual Aid is a network bringing people together to help each other. And one of the things I want to point out that we got to think about in Pittsburgh when we're talking about bringing people together, having a community, building a pod, whatever it is that we know that Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh region is incredibly segregated racially and economically. So we need to be able to figure out how to connect communities together and reach out to strangers, all that. So Pittsburgh Mutual Aid Network is a network bringing people together to help each other. And both the culture and the logistics of mutual aid in all its forms really prepare us, like Helen was saying, for future disasters. They make us more resilient as a society. And, you know, there's going to be disasters, right? There's going to be hurricanes, there will be pandemics, climate change is certainly making it worse. The destruction of our global ecology is making it worse, but something that's making it harder to deal with and makes us less prepared is the way that we relate to each other individually, communally, and on a big institution, systems, government level. We are just not prepared. We've set up a very fragile, very selfish system. So, and as we saw we're seeing it in the pandemic, and we saw it with Katrina, with Maria, hurricanes, where it was much worse than it had to be because of the way we've set up our social relations. So mutual aid has always been around, literally forever, as long as there's been humans. You know, around the world, tribal and indigenous cultures just embodied these ideas of mutual aid, community sharing. And so here, right, in North America, that was going on before the colonial invasion. And since the time of the colonial invasion, Black and Brown and indigenous communities have been excluded from our systems and institutions and opportunities. In this case, I'm saying our because I'm white and my ancestors invaded the Midwest. And then, so as we're doing our mutual aid work in the Pittsburgh Mutual Aid Network, you know, we recognize and we're learning from this history of what communities of color have always had to do. And we're also prioritizing, right, marginalized people. So Black and Brown people, indigenous people, queer and trans people, people with disabilities. And during COVID, certainly some of the most vulnerable people also includes immune compromised people and seniors. And I want to thank Helen for laying out such a good framework at the beginning. So I'm skipping over something, which is to point out that the problems of COVID are not just medical and biological, they're social. There's going to be a lot of social fallout, and it's revealing a lot of the inequities that are already in our system. So we've needed mutual aid for a long time. So mutual aid is really just networks of people helping each other. Sometimes that could look like bartering, or it could look like friends or roommates or family, right? But sometimes it's community-wide. It's strangers helping other people. Maybe I help someone out this week, and next week someone's looking out for me. And I'd much rather live in a society like that than what seems to be going on now, even though I'm doing relatively well in our current system. It's not just ethically the right thing to do, we're also all going to be better off if we balance out how we're sharing with each other. So I want to sort of point out, before I get into the logistics of what we've been doing, I want to talk a little more about this culture. So imagine mutual aid not just as a set of activities or tasks or a website or a phone list, right? But imagine it as a culture rooted in community and cooperation and the idea that people deserve what they need. And think about if that's really how we're living now, even though, you know, even people we like, even ourselves, right? We're not often living in that way. And we'll really thrive when we do. A natural part of that too is reducing waste and consumption. When we share and we recognize we don't really own things, we're just sort of shepherding them along and passing them around. It's much better for the living earth that we're all sharing with each other as well. It's striking that we live in a place with such needless false scarcity and starving people while we also have the highest levels of consumption in the world. I know you all know that, but just think about like the opposite. What's the vision? Where are we going? So I want to pause for a second and throw some ideas in the chat box. Get your chatting skills at the ready. So I just want to throw in examples of experiences that you've had that fit into this kind of sharing culture, this broad umbrella of what could be considered mutual aid. Okay. Has anyone had an example? Has anyone had an experience where you shared something with someone, maybe someone you didn't know, or where you were part of a group of people who helped each other out?
Hey, Gabriel, it's Mark. I'm going to just fill the gap here with my own little story. I posted in chat, but when the COVID-19 kicked in and a little before everybody was locked down, I was following the news and decided to make a point of talking to a couple of my neighbors to see if they were concerned. And we all got together and decided to do some bulk purchases together. I introduced one of them to the bulk purchase options at the co-op. We didn't hoard, but we just bought some supplies that we thought would help us, some dry goods. And we also bought a little bit extra for the neighbor who's like in her 90s, who we didn't talk to. We didn't want to alarm her. We just bought some food for her just in case she ended up needing it, and we're keeping it around. We've shared food starts, like plant starts, because those are a little trickier to find with some friends. We had extra kale. We gave some kale around to those neighbors, and we even put some on our sidewalk for people to take, but nobody took it. And we've stayed up to date with each other on the news. We also share shopping slots, where if one of us goes shopping, we ask the rest of the group in the pod if we want anything. And we're all neighbors, like we can just like drop stuff on the porch. So it doesn't actually matter, as some have mentioned, what the level of constraints are on our own behavior. We just drop food off for each other on our porch. And that way we save each other from having to do a lot of shopping to stay up on fresh stuff, but we also potentially save their shopping slots for people who need them perhaps more than we do, and try to reduce the amount of shopping slots that we force or ask gig workers to do. So we kind of try to just lighten the load across the system by collaborating, and that way we get as many eggs as we want and as many fresh items as we want, but without just having to go out and go it alone. It's brought us closer together. We really like it.
Thank you, Mark. And yeah, and something I want to highlight from there is like you started plant seedlings and you're sharing them with each other, and I assume that will ripple on as people share them and propagate more plants with people you don't even know. And I like that you put things out on the sidewalk. I like that you've got extra food and you're passing it around without some sort of very tight accounting on an older neighbor. This is that kind of thing is good. Also, maybe we could go on forever, but some other examples might include like picking up a hitchhiker or couch surfing, right? These are examples where like no one's really profiting, no one's exchanging money, but you're building up a system and a culture where everyone can benefit from it because we're all pitching in a bit. So
yeah, my daughter, who's away at college, had one of her housemates was contemplating driving home to Indiana and asked if we could put her up in like a basement, in the basement room. So there would not need to be any dis-isolation because we have that separate space. And that didn't wind up happening, but that sort of thing could happen.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, you know, maybe you don't, a couch surfing on your living room might not be so good for isolation, but many people have a room that might have a separate entrance or something like that.
Yes, exactly. Like a lot of us have, like, we have these houses with all these rooms and, you know, more than enough to go around. So, you know, in contrast to this kind of culture of mutual aid, just think honestly about the culture we're in. Sometimes it's easy to point to, you know, specific villains or specific really actively terrible people, or people are on TV being terrible a lot. But, you know, regardless, our culture, the sort of Western colonial culture that we have is based around individualism, competition, consumerism, and the idea that people deserve what they have, or sometimes deserve whatever they can take, depending on how you look at it. So what's the opposite of that, right? That's what we're going for. Mutual aid also, Helen shouted this out already, it's more about solidarity and sharing. It's not the same as charity. The idea is to, we all have something to give, and we all need support at some point, and seeing ourselves as one collective humanity. You know, what we have, I think we're especially, a lot of people are seeing this now, but it's really always true. What we have today might change tomorrow, and the less likely that is, the more secure we are, the safer and less precarious we are, the more that's a sign that the systems and institutions in our society are privileging us at the expense of somebody else. I mean, that's just how it works. So a sustainable future requires that we really develop this culture and skills around mutual aid. And, you know, that's going to prepare us for disasters of all kinds, but it's also going to sort of prepare us for the disaster that is our current society and economy. So, and totally open to questions once in like 3 minutes. So what is Pittsburgh Mutual Aid? Started out with a call, a whole bunch of people from around the city on March 14th, which is right around when sheltering in place started in Pennsylvania. We've got a website, pittsburghmutualaid.com. Got various social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You should follow it. And we got flyers. People are putting those up safely all around town if you want to help with that. It's nice outdoor time. People are making offers. You could let someone borrow a hammer. You can give someone a ride to the hospital. You can teach someone Spanish over the phone. There's all kinds of things. You could offer anything you want. People are making requests. You could maybe need a baby crib. Maybe you need some free food dropped off on your porch. Maybe you need someone to help you fill out an unemployment application over the phone because you don't have internet at your house, right? To request anything. We got this great website set up by some developers who have been making it for free for multiple cities. They and that lets people directly match with each other. But a big part of this has been a team of volunteers, which you can also join if you want, doing resource matching. So that's really actively talking to people on the phone, and then being creative, looking to our own networks, making calls on social media, trying to find people what they need. We've been partnering with Ratzon, which is a radical Jewish center for healing and resistance. They are, you know, they're not holding public events right now, right? So they've turned their space into a free food distribution site. And we're still taking in cash donations and redistributing them to people. I think the info is on the screen. And then I want to end on pointing out that this is really for you. Like, I hope people are hearing this not as the story of what we've been doing, but as an open invitation to plug into this however makes sense to you. If you're sheltering in place or you have any variety of needs, I hope this could really help you out. We can talk further. If you're looking for ways, if you're feeling pretty abundant and you're looking for ways to support other people, you can jump into this right away in a bunch of different ways. Maybe you're just looking for a way to shift further into wasting less, consuming less, and having a more resilient culture. And this is part of building that. Who's got questions?
Do you know how I can get my hands on a used refrigerator for someone in Hazelwood?
If you, we can try to do that. It will probably work. If you go, you could either follow up with me directly, or you could go to the PittsburghMutualAid.com and put in a request. And I mean, there's more than enough refrigerators to go around in the world, right? So
There's also a Facebook-based network of Buy Nothing groups.
Yep.
And there's one at Squirrel Hill Greenfield. It might also include Hazelwood, and you could post a need there. You can be a member of exactly one of those groups.
Mm-hmm.
If there's one that covers your area, I'll check offline whether it is includes Hazelwood, and I'll message Meg, who is now called Margaret, on the screen. If
Thank you so much. Yeah,
and that's
I'll
something.
see, and invite you to join the group if Hazelwood is included.
You should definitely do that. That is a part that I think is another example of mutual aid culture. And also that's something that Pittsburgh Mutual Aid has been doing as a network, because the Buy Nothing groups are often localized, right? But
they're very, by design, they're
all around
local.
the region, right? And we all have different social networks. Then people have been literally using the Buy Nothing groups, but also a bunch of other social networks to find, things like fridges, cribs.
This is exciting to me.
Yeah, I'll send you, it does include Hazelwood, and plus you live in Greenfield, so I will see if I can invite you to join the group.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
There's a question, Gabriel, from Marta. Do you interface with Nextdoor pages at all?
Yeah, so, and all of that, with whether it's a Buy Nothing group on Facebook or the Nextdoor groups, there's nothing automated about that, but people doing resource matching have been going into all those as many of those different groups as we can find in order to try to connect people with what they need.
Great. And there's another one from Sean. Thanks for the great presentation and perspective. Would that be the same for air conditioners or fans?
Oh man, this is great, because we were just trying to record a video the other day, and I was trying to think of like 100 different things to say that you could do with this network. And so basically, if there's an object, especially something like that there's a ton extra of, right? Like no one needs to buy the fan, right? There's people have like 12 of them in their basement. We just got to get the fans to the people that need them.
Yep.
Same true for scissors, hammers, what have you.
How about construction material or used windows?
I mean, I guess,
junction.
So I think, there's like a bunch of, I certainly wouldn't rule that out. A lot of the requests we've been getting, requests really range widely, right? So we've been doing a lot of food distribution, and part of that is because our one of the flaws of our current society is people's survival is literally based on these jobs that don't pay you anything, and you have to have a job to survive, and then the jobs don't even let you survive. So if everything shuts down for even a week, people are just out. But also, people have been connecting around, like I think someone's getting a whole, I don't know how many people have been making this happen, but a bunch of people have been working together to get a crib and a bunch of baby supplies to someone that needs it. And, so if you can think of it and it's around, then it's worth pinging the network for. And that could be doesn't have to be a material object either, right? So it could be that you want to, maybe you're a therapist or a counselor, and you want to offer some emotional support to someone, or you'd like to find someone to practice foreign language with you, or like, I forget, Susan or someone had an example earlier where they were helping somebody fill out these government forms. That's still something a lot of people don't have access to the internet. And so if you have an internet connection and you're sort of used to filling out forms and that, you can do that for people. It really helps them out,
Gabriel?
So how does the transport normally happen?
Yeah, go Greg. How does go ahead, Greg.
Oh, I was just asking, how does the transport normally happen? Because that's obviously part of it for a lot of these things.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah. So, well, one thing to keep in mind, right, is that like I have several friends who I love dearly, who are doing quite well economically and seem to have just worked out a complete airlock sheltering at home system. And they still get all their stuff delivered, and they're Grubhubbing all the time and all this, right? So like there's a bunch of low-wage workers living in high-stress lives, touching all their food before it gets to their door. So any delivery has its own flaws these days. The couple deliveries I've been a part of and ones that I've talked people through is you want to, ideally, you should, this is something I've been doing in general anyway, you know, wash your hands before you leave the house, wear gloves, wear a mask. If you're going to get groceries for someone, it's a bunch of people have probably touched them, right? So part of it is on the person receiving the delivery. You're going to want to like clean your stuff when you get it. It's better to exchange things by putting it on a porch or front step. I know I went with someone to drop off groceries at an apartment building. There's no front porch, right? So we did is we put them down on the concrete sidewalk place and patio, and then stood back, right? So we could still see the groceries. We weren't just leaving a bunch of like eggs and stuff on the sidewalk. We stood back about 10 feet away, called them, they came down to get them, we waved at them, and then went and left. And then, you know, everyone's far apart, but yeah.
Okay, well, part of the question was, you know, is volunteering to transport stuff
Huge.
Part of your list of exchanges?
Yes, and that's been huge because sometimes there's, yeah, because also there's people who, well, take groceries, for example, right? There's been people who've been volunteering to pick up food from Ratzone over in Bloomfield, North Oakland, and then drop it off at the houses of people who need it. Well, that person's volunteering to drive. They don't have to volunteer to have the food to give away in the first place. Or like with the baby crib, right? Like someone had a baby crib. They didn't have a way to transport it. Someone else volunteers to go get it, bring it somewhere, right? So like the driver is like a huge link in the chain.
Gabriel, there's a question that Ed Klugman would like to ask. Ed, go ahead, ask your question.
Well, my question is really a comment.
Great.
First of all, I appreciate what you're doing. It's wonderful that you have conversation. The group that is excluded, or I haven't heard from, is the Teachers Association of Pittsburgh and the Teachers Association of Pennsylvania, who have to think about the classroom every day. And it's a very important component not to think about the future and talking about the curriculum in school. What should it be like? What have we learned from over the last half year that should be addressed by schools, by community, and global healing, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go on.
It needs to be addressed because the future is before us as well as the past.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to take that comment as a question because I think it certainly begs a lot of questions and carries a lot of insight. So thank you. You know, personally, and then institutionally, the Merton Center, I think support the teachers union generally, right? That seems good. But I think something we're seeing now under the current situation is people expecting students to go to online classes. Some families, some students, some whole neighborhoods don't even really have access to the internet or personal computers, right? So that, again, that's revealing the inequity that was already there. And if it's a question about curriculum, I'm just sort of reacting off the top of my head. It's a question about curriculum. I think that our overall curriculum is not just in Pittsburgh, but in the US is really under-educating and misinforming people. And it would do us a lot of good to think about scaffolding lessons very early on so that students are better prepared to think for themselves and make more resilient and community-based decisions once they hit adolescence and adulthood. I think one example, and I think you can see how to apply this to sustainability, I'm just sort of thinking out loud, is people have developed some really good curriculums around consent and sort of sexual consent. And it doesn't, instead of starting when kids are 14, they start, when kids are in first grade by saying, like, ask your friend if you can give them a hug before you give them a hug. Well, if instead of having kids play Monopoly at age 9, we figured out ways to have them learn how to cooperate and share, we'd probably be setting ourselves up for a better society a generation from now. And also, it'd probably do us some good to learn better history. Those are just my reactions. I think everything you said is really important. That's just like one drop in the bucket of an answer. Anyone else have questions?
Gabriel, I have a question. I'm watching for other people raising their hands, but while I'm waiting for that, I'm really curious if you have, and what kinds of need have you encountered? It's, sometimes I'm stupefied by the disconnect between our federal policy of shutdown and our federal policy of not helping people pay essential bills and things. And I'm wondering what kind of insights you're getting by closely affiliating with this mutual aid society, of how people are doing in filling that gap that seems to just be so obvious and yet designed poorly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, okay, I think about two things. One is our institutions, especially our governments, right, they're all part of a power struggle, and they're all extensions, these big artificial things that we create that are extensions of the culture that we live in, right? And so a lot of those things, whether it's what Helen was talking about the elaborate paperwork that people have to fill out, or whether it's the idea that, that everything's underfunded, there's not enough resources to go around. All of that, in some ways, is an extension of a culture that assumes that people don't deserve what they need, that assumes there's something wrong with people if they need things, that lies to us and tells us we're all individuals who somehow earned what we have instead of being part of a community, right? So there's sort of a politics that comes out of the culture that shapes the institutions, and we're seeing that fail right now. And something I would like, and I think something that the Merton Center has been working on through the Poor People's Campaign, especially, is moving the debate from whether or not we should reopen business to why can't we give people what they need in order to care for themselves and each other and make the healthiest choice. I don't think people really want to go out of their way to go, work a dangerous low-wage job right now. They want, feelings of dignity and stability and security and safety.
Thanks, Gabriel. There's a question from Betsy. Betsy, I'm going to unmute you and go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have a friend who is an immigrant on an H-1B, and his landlord has been very lax in repairing a hole in his roof, basically. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that, of course, as an immigrant, he's sort of subject to a lot of scrutiny. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, his landlord is saying because of COVID, he doesn't have money to, keep his place in good condition. So, is there any movement around like tenants groups or tenants organizations that's sort of trying to bring them together so that we can make landlords behave better?
Is he, in a very general, to get into specifics, but is he part of a tenants group?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I know that there is a sort of national rent strike movement that's stronger in some cities than others, based on the idea that a lot of people just literally can't pay rent, so they're not going to because they can't. I think that, so I'm not an expert on the answer to that question. You could totally follow up with me, and I could definitely put you in touch with some people or organizations that could probably help. I'm just having trouble thinking of it off the top of my head. But yeah, I think there's also a real tension there because people have tenants' rights, but just as the problems happen where we have rights with the police, it's sort of like the landlord can often just get away with doing whatever they want first, and then you have to go to court later, right? So.
Right, and that just, it seems like that's accentuated during this period.
Yes, exactly. But it's also, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. If I could quickly chime in.
Go for it.
There is a housing justice table that has been, they've been doing formally a rent strike because there are concerns about the tenants actually bearing the brunt of consequences, which sometimes can be quite violent. But a cancel rent movement here in the Pittsburgh region, which is part of that larger kind of resistance to our current structures of using housing for profit. So they're trying to balance the need to support small landlords whose livelihoods often depend, like an older woman who rents to help just survive, right? But they're trying to really focus on the injustice of the system itself. Draw contrasts with other systems where social housing is much more the norm and it's supported by our taxes and our federal structures. And then Homes for All is part of a larger national network that is indeed supporting all kinds of rent strikes in creative ways. So the Hill District Consensus Group is part of that, is kind of the point organization for Homes for All, working with other organizations here on the local level. Carl Redwood would be a great person to talk to. Celeste Taylor. There's a whole range of activists that I would be glad to connect you with. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and you can contact me if you'd like to be connected with some of those folks.
And I guess there's like a sort of, sounds like there might be like a legal question in there because you want to know about the protections the tenant has.
Yes.
That totally makes sense. And I'm not.
There are
but
so
few that doesn't sound.
There's so few tenant protections in Pittsburgh. We are, we are, in terms of like the racially imposed segregation, poverty, we really are one of the worst in the country in terms of long-time government imposed damages through the housing system. But there really is a network of great folks that are working on this and connecting with the larger activist groups that are pushing at the very foundations of the system.
And yeah, so that's a really important situation. And I think part of something else to think about with sort of mutual aid and supporting each other is like, it isn't always material, right? So sometimes people have some expertise or knowledge in some field, whether that's they can teach you a foreign language or they're a housing rights lawyer. And so knowledge and experiences are things to share with each other as well.
I have a strange situation where the people that I know are living in a situation where the landlords, I'm going to be very positive about their character, but there's mice and roaches and issues with the space, and to talk to about helping landlord and the residents are benefited because they're not getting good space either.
Yeah,
it's a real trouble. Mental health issues, and where they live and how they live. If anyone after this wants to set me on that path, I'll deeply listen.
Yeah, and I mean, I think overall, and that's true, and that's immediate and a sort of acute problem. Overall, I think we're going to have to look at why we make housing this for-profit commodity. And there's certainly a lot of, I mean, my landlord's a nice guy. It's great. But regardless of their personalities, there's tons of landlords who either provide luxury service but charge so much that it forces other people out of the neighborhood, or the tenants are paying rent, but they still live in terrible, barely livable conditions. So, you know, it's not a good system.
But we're powerful together, right? So.
Oh yeah, I know. Sorry, I didn't mean that to sound hopeless. I meant, like, I think that what's important to do is like, we have to deal with these acute problems immediately, because those people are living there right now, tonight, right? And also, like, let's imagine what people actually deserve. And like what we individually can do to support, like how we can work together collectively to change systems, but also it does change systems somewhat when we show people individually what's possible.
So much easier doing it with you, actually, than me just showing up with the landlords trying to do it myself. I can tell you that.
Is there anyone on this call who's actually who's somehow connected with Pittsburgh Mutual Aid before? Like, you made an offer or a request? If you want to share, you don't have to. Okay. Oh, also, I forgot, shout out to, I think Kacy is talking later from the Restaurant Workers Mutual Aid Relief Project. And it has been super helpful to talk to Kacy about how they've been doing what they've been doing. And Kacy helped get food to some of the people we were talking to, or someone did. Kacy and others, I'm assuming. So shout out to them.
Thank you so much, Gabe. Thanks for sharing all the stuff that you're doing. It's really exciting to see so many different networks in this one location. Also, I have a cool opportunity that I'll speak offline with you about, which could be some boxes of produce and dairy. So we send out to a weekly donation of it. So
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk offline.
Does anyone else have questions or comments?
Dan Little, Dan.
I was going to say that my hand was raised about Gabe, me reaching out to you guys about some sort of collaboration at the beginning when you guys started your mutual aid, but nothing ever transpired. I didn't do any kind of activity with mutual aid, but basically what I was in communication with, who was it? I'm forgetting her name right off the top of my head. But I was in communication about offering the InvolveMint platform to see if there was some impetus to see if at the very beginning of COVID-19 to see if there was some time banking activities that participants in the mutual aid network would want to do. But nothing ever transpired from that. But
oh yeah, well, I'm psyched to see your presentation. Because I think what I hope will happen with all of these efforts is that more of them will sprout and will all sort of evolve into a kind of mutual aid ecology. And like I was saying earlier, all of this is going to just become more and more needed the longer it goes on. Even, doesn't matter, we're talking 18 months for COVID, or I don't understand exactly how long that'll last. It's like, whenever that's over, we're still going to need this, right?
Well, people are certainly not making any more money out there, so.
Right. So it's
so
I think
it's going to be a recession for until till crap hits the fan in a major way, even though it kind of already has. But we're still kind of stuck with just this this kind of austerity, scarcity mentality that everybody's facing. So we have to kind of move forward and provide new ways to pay forward with the future.
And for some people, the fan hitting.
Oh yeah, it's already, yeah.
Say 500 years ago, or around the time of the invasion of this land.
All right, I think we should move on at this point, and folks will be, Dan, who's currently big on my screen, we'll be hearing from him a little bit later when we talk about how he has started using his InvolveMint platform. But first, I think, Anaïs, are you here? Let's see see if you are, okay, you are unmuted, so you are somewhere. Do we have a video for you yet?
I'm here.
There you are. Okay, so some of the, we just talked a bunch about housing, and we mentioned couch surfing, and a couple months back, a whole lot of Pitt students were sent home for spring break and not welcomed back onto campus. And so I think there's been a bunch of that. That has been part of efforts that Anaïs has been involved with in Pitt Mutual Aid, along with other things from finances to emotional and spiritual support. And so, and Anaïs, I want to say congratulations on graduating from the University of Pittsburgh. And Anaïs has been an activist throughout her college career. They've done fossil-free Pitt divestment protests and actions and sit-ins and petitions, and there has been, and also you've gotten more recently involved in activizing for prison reform and releasing people from prisons, which are an obvious danger area for pandemic spread. And so thank you for all of your hard work, and also helping to lead the student government. You were, I forget exactly what your title was, but you were winning elections for student body, I don't know, president, vice president, something.
Yeah.
So you've had a really amazing career so far, and you're just fresh out of college. So let's tell us about Pitt Mutual Aid.
That was so kind. Thank you. And congratulations on 100 salons. It's amazing, honestly. So yeah. Yeah, my name's Anaïs. Pronouns are they are my name, and just graduated.
I missed once, but I did pretty well, I think. But
yeah,
I did miss one. I missed once, and I'm working on it. I've so many non-conforming people in my life and family that it's sometimes just got to catch ourselves and do better every time.
No, it's the nice thing too, actually, about moving to online platforms.
It says it right there.
Yeah, people can read themselves on Zoom, which makes it a lot easier because then you can just check real quick if you want to do that. But yeah, so there's just been like so much information. I'm like overwhelmed. But Pitt Mutual Aid. So yeah, I feel like I lost my notes. Okay. So obviously our focus is primarily on the Pitt community, from students, whether that be undergrads to grads, faculty, staff, really who's ever been reaching out to us in need of support. And so we started on March 12th, about then. I know actually March 12th was the day that Pitt announced that they would be moving to online classes. And unlike other schools, I think after Harvard made the mistake of essentially evicting all their students, a lot of institutions went, oh, let's not do that. So they kind of reevaluated their plan during coronavirus. And so what Pitt did is, instead of simply asking or simply saying that dorms were shut down, they asked any student who could to not return to campus, but kept the option of students being able to stay in campus housing, but shifting it so that they would be a lot more spaced out. No one would be using shared bathrooms. And they've continued to change that process so that people are essentially living very, very far away from each other when they were on campus. But that was a really uncomfortable offer to a lot of people. So it did feel in some ways like they were being evicted because they didn't want to be the only person on their floor. For example, in Tower A, where there's, I think, probably 30 rooms on a floor. So when Pitt announced that classes would be all online, what happened was students from the Asian Students Alliance and Aquarius, which is a club focused on the intersections of Asian American and queer identities, came together primarily in response to the xenophobic and racist dimension of the coronavirus, as it primarily was affecting Asian American communities at that time. So those folks came together and wanted to focus first on creating a research guide and just putting out information so that the Pitt community would have a reliable place to understand what was happening, both with the virus to the extent that we could understand it, and with Pitt's response. So that's where Pitt Mutual Aid started from. And then we really quickly grew into the housing and storage side of providing support. As students were being asked to come back to campus, the timeline that they were given was often as short as one day, because what Pitt did is they said, you have, I think it was about a week and a half to come back. And if you take your things out of your dorm by this point, you'll get, I believe, about a 30% refund. So a lot of students who had gone home for spring break, whether that be Philly or a lot further, were given a date, which was often the next day, where they had to come back and get their stuff. And they didn't have storage set up or anything like that. So there's a lot of work being done to just, with people living in Oakland or in the surrounding communities, offer up basements or extra room in their houses so that students wouldn't have to dump a lot of their belongings, which I think, now that I realize, is a really great intersection we see between sustainability, environmental sustainability, and this particular part of mutual aid, because students are so incredibly wasteful when they move out of their dorms. It's one of my favorite times of the year to dumpster dive, because people just clear out everything. And as we saw at the beginning of the coronavirus, as people were moving out, students, because they were given so little time, just threw out essentially everything they had, from the entirety of their fridge. They just unplugged it and threw it out with all the food still in it, to all their textbooks. There was unopened toilet paper, just a massive waste of stuff because they didn't know what to do with it. So after that initial kind of rush happened, the Pitt Mutual Aid group shifted and expanded to encompass more space. As folks talked about already, mutual aid is more than just material aid. So we looked at what was going on, what was needed, and a lot of the examples coming from East Coast schools, primarily Middlebury, that put out a really wonderful spreadsheet that had a lot more support. So we expanded to transportation, emotional, spiritual, and most recently a monetary support fund, which means we are just dealing with a lot of different Google Forms and spreadsheets to connect people with the resources they need. And so how we're set up is we have 6 directors, and all of those are undergraduate students or recent alumni who are basically the director of one of these different teams. So what I'm doing during the semester, it was emotional support, spiritual support, and student government liaison. But since I have graduated, I am no longer in a student government role, so I'm just focusing on emotional and spiritual support, which we've kind of found to be the most hazy part of mutual aid within the student community. And I think kind of the just general populace at large, as we're so conditioned to be individualized and to be very private about any sort of emotional response we're going through, and not share that with other people. And so it's been the most, I wouldn't say difficult, but it has to be the slowest transition into easing people into the understanding that what collective care looks like in terms of mutual aid, and breaking through this individualized transactional relationship to encourage people to be in community with each other. And as we see this isolation stretching out, something Pitt Mutual Aid is really looking to do is create more peer support networks and just create more community events. As during the semester, it was really not easy, but there was a lot of intention, and clubs were having events, and the university was doing sponsored work and things like that. But now that we're moving into the summer, clubs aren't around, the university is not having events or anything like that. So it's once again fallen onto students to create spaces that they need which is unfortunate, but also a really great opportunity in which we can build our own communities and what we need for ourselves. And it's in this space of community building that the directors have started talking about how we can collab with Pittsburgh Mutual Aid and looking at creating wider community spaces beyond just students, because so often Oakland gets isolated as Oakland community and then Pittsburgh community. We don't get those chances to interact. So we're looking at building community as the wider Pittsburgh community, even though a lot of the work we did at the beginning was simply focused on Pitt students. So there's that work in terms of Pitt Mutual Aid, and then there is the wider student response network and student mutual aid network that's, I believe, national. I don't think there's anyone from Canada or outside the US, called SOMAD, which is Students Organizing Mutual Aid and Defense. And it's in that network that I think I'm really seeing the most space for radical education and imagination. That I know people have brought up education a lot in previous questions, and I think this network is really intentional in understanding mutual aid as a political form of political participation, and they're doing a lot of work in looking at the historical significance and meaning of mutual aid, how we can build from this moment and connect student networks across the United States, regionally, and just, they're doing an incredible amount of work. There's study group, radical study group every Wednesday, and it's this space in which students who are already organizing mutual aid networks are coming together and reaching out and branching, learning from each other. And I think it's that space that is, we see the cracking open again of institutions of higher education who have no idea how to respond to this crisis in some ways, or are responding in completely inadequate responses, in which, for example, Pitt is offering one-time grants of $650, but a lot of people are getting denied, and people are getting evicted. So at this time where institutions are failing us, I think students have done a really great job of actually taking up space outside of an institutional framework and coming to mutual aid so often as people who just want to help each other. And it's slowly becoming a space where people understand mutual aid as a wider sense of political participation, which I think people have talked about so much before, and that how this is a moment of potential. But I think in terms of student organizing, this is such a great place of education. And now that we are in the summer and in quarantine, we're learning so much from each other, but also still, I mean, looking to learn from folks who have a better understanding of it, and in collaboration with people like Pittsburgh Mutual Aid. So that is an overview of what I have been doing, kind of rambly, but I'm gonna send out links as well to everything Pitt Mutual Aid is doing, as well as SOMAD, in case anyone out there wants to get involved with that or has any resources to share. But I don't know if there's any questions or clarifying things, or if I just went over something too fast. But yeah. That is one, and then that is the other. I will highlight under the Pitt Mutual Aid info, we do have a Discord, which is essentially open to anyone, again, as a part of the community building space. Discord is not my preferred chat platform. I know it's a little scary for some folks who aren't familiar with it, but if you are interested in joining, you're welcome. Whether or not you're affiliated with Pitt in any way, living in Pittsburgh, or the surrounding area, just if you want to be in communication with us, please join. Discord is also going to be where I think we highlight any sort of community events we're doing, whether that be movie nights or just check-in groups or things like that. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Were there any questions there or points of discussion? Or if not, we can, we were such a complete picture that, okay, then we can, yes, and thank you for all the work you do, as your estimable mom says. Hello to Diane and Bob, proudly watching. So
I also love, oh,
yeah.
sorry, I love that you were sort of prepared with chat links, that you're like PowerPointing the chat. And I think it's a badass adaptation to reality. So
yes, very good.
Yeah, you got to keep learning like that. I think it's a great example.
I'm and in line with that, I am trying to prepare a coherent list, which of course I didn't do before because I was, I don't know, battening down for the next rainstorm, of upcoming events that I wanted to share with people, and I make sure that they're all on Marion's list. So I'm doing a little of that in the background. And so Dan, are you ready to rock and roll with your presentation?
Dan Little is involvement, Dan?
That's right, Dan
Right.
Little. Okay, so some years back, Dan started cogitating about local currencies, and also the value of people's time, even when it's volunteer, for something that you're doing just because you think it's a good thing to do. And so he designed this platform called InvolveMint, minting a currency that values people's time, but incorporates things of real value, and involves local business establishments to participate in it and enable somebody to work hard on a great project, and the business is kicking in a little by letting you spend that currency. So I'm going to stop explaining it because he is the person doing it, and so and just in the pandemic times, he realized that this platform could be very useful in getting things to people who needed them. So yep. Take it away, Dan.
Great. Can everybody hear me? We're good? Can everybody see the screen? Yes?
Well, yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Well, I'm presenting the screen now, so I have a couple slides that I'm presenting here. But Maren, thank you for the introduction. So my name is Daniel Little. I'm the director of InvolveMint, and our mission is to build local currency systems in under-resourced community. Just to give you some background about this project, as Maren hinted at, I was originally conceived and really fascinated by the idea of local currencies during my time with the Thomas Merton Center. This was back in like 2014. We organized a conference where we invited Gar Alperovitz to come, and we called it the Celebration of the New Economy. And it was during that time that I was kind of, the idea of local currency was kind of percolating in my mind. And then fast forward to about 2017, we finally got some money to actually build out a platform. And then we did some, small scale piloting that was more focused on volunteerism as a way to provide perks and rewards for volunteerism. But we quickly realized that as we were doing that work, we worked with a lot of different organizations. We worked with Hammond Arcade. We worked with Railvolution, which was a conference that came here in 2018, mostly on event-based volunteerism. But we quickly realized that some of the problems that we were looking to address were a lot bigger than just volunteerism. So we really kind of wanted to make an impact and within the problem of labor and helping to facilitate and valorize people's time when they are contributing to community-based projects, because there's a lot of underserved need in our communities, and that need is just not getting addressed with all of our collapsing institutions. So we decided that we wanted to go forward and kind of make a very viable local currency that would enable people to give their time on a community-based initiative to help, support or not support, but help address a chronic challenge, whether that be food insecurity, whether that be education. And so we recently received a grant in 2019 from the Hillman Foundation to actually build out the latest version of the platform, which is slated to be ready in August. But I want to move forward just kind of to show you what InvolveMint is. So right now, what we've done is we've created a web app for people to find community-based positions to join. So these are positions that we're calling change makers. They're a little bit longer term than your typical kind of volunteer activity. So we don't call them volunteers, but they're not quite paid employees. They're a little bit in between. In exchange for their work, they receive a local currency that they can spend for neighborhood resources. So this gives you a definition of the idea of a change maker. So it's a person that is giving their time on a recurring basis to address a chronic community challenge. And in turn, they earn this stipend of local currency that is valued among community resources. So this is sort of a call to action for people who want to give their time to become a change maker. Oftentimes we're finding that the people who are signing up to become change makers are from all walks of life. They might be retired and just want to give their time and giving back to the community. They might also be people, millennials, a lot of millennials that are just tired of working in the gig economy and fed up with the low wage, non-rewarding work that they're currently receiving in the gig economy. So they kind of want to give their time to a community-based cause. So how do we bring value to the currency? Well, as you're probably learning from Mutual Aid Network's discussion, there are many different resources that exist in the community. There's a lot of latent resources, a lot of people who have air conditioners, a lot of people who have fans, a lot of people who are growing produce. And what we want to do is be able to leverage these resources to help encourage community-based labor to tackle chronic challenges directly. So this is an overview of how the system works. So basically anybody will give their time and service to tackle chronic community challenge. And I'll go forward and talk about the projects that we're working on now. And they mint, and for a change maker who gives their time, every hour that they mint, they get one time credit, and each hour is worth about $15 an hour. They can spend their time credits with other people within the network, so it becomes like a person-to-person, peer-to-peer model, or they can spend these time credits at local businesses, and the local businesses are actually able to circulate these time credits out from there as well. And there's a little bit of economics that kind of takes into play that I'm not going to go too far into, but if anybody's interested in kind of asking about that, I'm more than happy to engage in that conversation. So there are basically two ways that people can join the network. It's basically they can serve as a change maker, working on a specific community project, and those two community projects are our Food Security Refresh project in Hazelwood and our Changemaker initiative in Braddock. Or people can join the platform as members, where they're not necessarily serving on a recurring basis, but they can offer their skills and their services and their resources to change makers, and then once they exchange, they can use those credits in exchange with other people or other businesses that are participating in the network. So those are the two ways there. This is in order to kind of build sort of solidarity and stewardship of the network, we have a very kind of cohesive process for onboarding change makers, which is basically identifying certain positions in the community where change makers are going to be taking place in, and then conducting kind of informational interviews about understanding their needs and what sort of resources that we want to tailor the currency to bring value so they can address their core needs, whether that's food or transportation or what have you. And then we work with a lead agency to train the change makers to eventually be deployed, so they're working on their particular project of service. When we onboard each of the change makers and each of the members of the community, we find it very important that that this currency does not just become a mechanism of exchange, that it's a mechanism of reciprocity, and that is a mechanism of community building, because a lot of our current exchanges that are happening in the modern economy have become absolved from, community. They've become absolved from any sort of cohesive identity or any sort of cohesive agenda. It's just basically, pay me money and I'll, give you something, usually a product service, whether it's like Rainbow Oreos or something that doesn't really, matter that much. I mean, it could matter, but it's just become very kind of dissolved from any sort of purpose in the communities. So we like to put forth a series of 8 principles for each of the change makers and each of the members that are joining the network. The first one is that everyone is an asset. Everybody has something to give. Everybody has something to offer, and everybody has needs. People are able to contribute from what they love to do. Anybody can, reciprocity. Anybody can be a helper. Anybody can receive help. And we're trying to, one of the biggest things that we're doing with the concept as a change maker is kind of redefining work in the economy, such that we're bringing value to social services and we're bringing value to environmental services, so they no longer have to go chronically undervalued in our current economy, because this is what I believe is the future of work, and these are some of the most undervalued labor in our current economy. So we want to redefine what is the notion of work, to make it such that people can contribute, serving their community, serving each other, and serving the environment and stewardship. Social network building, obviously, anybody we want to join, we want them to, develop strong relationships and bring more people into the fold, so they're joining our network. Maintaining a culture of localism. This is key when we're developing resources with local businesses and exchanges with local businesses, is that when we're planning out kind of the circuitry of the currency and how resources are exchanged, we want to make sure that when we're doing that, we're building a sense of agency among our change makers, but also a sense of resilience and self-reliance, such that, as we see a lot of our federal institutions failing, that we really find systems that are really complementary to what, our current systems that are already out there. And as, we see the increased threat with climate change and the increase, the affect of, our destabilizing ecosystems, it's going to be incredibly important that we're able to build these sort of localized networks of exchange. Obviously, respect and solidarity. So we want to prioritize communities that, whose needs are not being met by the mainstream economy. So there are 2 initiatives that we're currently working on. One is a bit of a longer term initiative, and one just recently formed from in response to COVID-19. The one that was formed in response to COVID-19 is the Braddock Changemaker Initiative. And what we're finding is that whenever we're building these local currency projects in our communities, we're finding that there's a cross collaborative of stakeholders that we have to engage, because community networks, you have to have a lot of buy-in from a lot of different communities in order for the currency to be able to maintain its circulation and maintain its value. So we're working currently with the mayor of Braddock, Sharday Jones, Mike Belmont, the Woodland Hills School District, a group called Neighbors Helping Neighbors, which consists of Alice Leibowitz and John Reyes, and Lauren Beecham of the Braddock Carnegie Library Association, among others. And we're building a response directly to COVID-19. And what that response looks like is looking at who is already providing existing services to the neighborhoods of Braddock and North Braddock and adjacent neighborhoods. So we've kind of categorized 4 different types of sectors that are kind of involved in providing relief and providing aid for Braddock citizens on the ground. So there's food partners, which are basically farms or suppliers providing food; serve partners, which are food pantries distributing food; change makers, who are kind of filling in the gaps; and the recipients, the people who actually need the services that that are not that have needs that are not being met. So what we're doing is, with the app, is we're recruiting change makers to call all of these neighboring agencies to make sure that there are no gaps in resources. Our goals are not to duplicate anything that already exists. We just want to augment things that already exist. find where the gaps are, and then use the change makers to fill the gaps either through providing socialization or providing last mile delivery. So an example would be one of our members of Neighbors Helping Neighbors. We had about 5 individuals say that they were kind of food insecure and that they were not able to get out to the food pantry. So we deployed change makers to be able to go to the food pantry, kind of either go to the grab and go food site or do kind of in-person shopping for each of the change makers, and then drop these products and services off at the change maker's door. And of course, the change makers in return are going to be receiving reciprocity because they are, every hour that they serve, they're getting these time credits, which are going to be used that they're exchanging with each other. And then as we come out of COVID-19, being able to bring additional value to the network through the local business community that as businesses reopen. Like I said, 1 hour served, you get 1 time credit, and we're valuing the time credit at about $15 an hour. These are sort of the positions that we derived for this initiative. So we basically, whenever we're creating these initiatives, we like to create specific positions that people in specific roles that people serve, which can be fungible. And then Neighbors Helping Neighbors serves as the lead agency, which helps coordinate matching the need with someone being able to service the need. So they've done a really good job at help kind of serving the Braddock community and identifying change makers. Here's some of the call to actions that the brochures that we created for helping out in Braddock and in the community there. The second initiative has been a longer term initiative. Been working, it's been funded by the Hillman Foundation. It's called Food Security Refreshed, but it also has implications with COVID-19 as well, because food security is a big issue across all of our communities. So we are currently working in Hazelwood to actually take an underactivated asset, in this case food waste, and deploy change makers to collect this food waste and actually compost it to turn it into fresh and healthy food. So we work with local businesses, we collect their food waste like Iron Maiden or Zenith or Community Kitchen Pittsburgh, just to name a number of different businesses that we're working with. And we collect this food waste and we hot compost this food waste to turn into compost. We then use that compost as a product to grow fresh and healthy food on community farms in Hazelwood. And by kind of deploying this kind of community-based labor, we're able to create more people going out and actually building food systems such that the community themselves can actually become the agency by which they're growing food that helps to feed the community. So here's an example of the positions that we've created for this particular project. This is some of the example, a picture of our change makers working with our compost heap. This is right in March, right before the stay-at-home restrictions were in place. But these are the compost heaps that we have been doing. This is the site that we have on the Hilltop Urban Farm. We're soon to get a site in Hazelwood as well to do this composting and actually start growing food as well. And the way this site is set up, it's set up as a grid composting site. So we have the change makers kind of turning the compost every 2 days. And then by the time that the compost gets to the end of the line, we're able to use that to help mix in with the soil and create a healthy soil base. So instead of having this food waste that is coming from restaurants entering the landfill and contributing in carbon emissions, we're actually sequestering that carbon by putting it back into the soil and putting those nutrients back into the soil that would have been otherwise wasted. And here is some more pictures. You can see that the compost gets pretty hot. We look to get a temperature of about 140 degrees Fahrenheit so that we can, I always screw up the pronunciation of this, but Actinomycetes is, I believe, the bacteria that kind of breaks it down at that temperature. And at that level, we can actually turn that food waste into compost within a period of just 2 weeks. So it's actually, it's actually a process that we're looking to scale so we can provide compost for more different community farms. This is kind of just where you can go to look at the app. We currently are still using our MVP that was created. MVP stands for Minimum Viable Product, that was created in 2017. But we're looking to release the newest iteration of the app come August. And we have a lot of different personnel who are working on that, which is going to be fully kind of automating the onboarding process for the change makers and being able to really be able to create matches between people who want resources and people who have resources to give. So we envision a whole kind of, for lack of a better word, market for where people will be able to exchange resources on the app within their community. This is just a little illustration of our team here. You can go to our website and see different people who are participating with us. And also, we also have a Facebook group that I encourage people to join called InvolvePGH. That's where we post updates on the work that we're doing in the community and additional initiatives that we have in the work. We actually have about 3 other initiatives that we're currently planning on that are currently in the works, but we're not public about that yet because everything hasn't been finalized. But that's where kind of the latest information is public. And we also have our channels, Facebook, social media channels, if you're interested in kind of following there. If you're interested in actually becoming a change maker, becoming a member to start exchanging the credits, you can sign up at info.io/get involved. And does anybody have any questions? I'm sure there are questions out there.
Well, Ilona had a question of terminology.
Mm-hmm.
Calling this volunteerism when people are getting something sort of real world.
Yeah, we don't
credits.
call it. We don't call it volunteerism.
So
it is.
Like
we call it.
Okay.
We call it service, but we don't call it volunteerism.
Okay, there you go.
So you are getting recompense for your service, but the idea behind it is that we're basically inducing the labor force to actually work on causes that, you know, are important to the community, and the community collaborative that we form in each of these communities kind of have the sort of the agency and decide, you know, what sort of initiatives are important. We're still kind of working to figure out, okay, how do we kind of create a far-reaching organization such that we're able to get the pulse on what the community feels are pressing issues, especially in a lot of chronically underserved communities, and being able to have more input from community members to decide, okay, these are the projects that are going to be able to mint the currency, and these are the projects, these are the priorities of the communities that we really want to focus on. But the idea is not to incentivize volunteerism. The idea is to support community-based labor to tackle the challenges that, you know, our communities are facing.
Yeah, and to create, Sean just said if someone is interested in not having recompense and helping out involvement, is that feasible too? And I talked about sort of infusing food into the system as well as time. There's
always opportunity to donate your credits.
There needs to be some donations to create, to engender the value behind the minted currency. So I think that's Sean's answer is a definite yes.
Yes, so there is definitely an opportunity for people to participate. I always recommend people to still mint credits because there are initiatives that you like. There is a farm initiative that we're looking to support, the Hazel and Olive Farm, that they don't have any sort of change maker projects, but there are people earning credits that may want to donate their credits to the farm so they can, you know, get people to help out with their farm and help grow more fresh and healthy produce. And, you know, eventually, you know, you exchange the credits for the produce that is created from that farm. So there are instances in which people will earn or mint credits and would want to donate them to other people or other worthy causes that they would, you know, feel is worthy or that they individually see as worthy. So I always recommend that even if you are an individual that has the time to give and has the resources backing them, that you'd still earn the credits because you can always donate them to other initiatives that want to become involved in the network.
Dan, can I ask how these time credits can be spent at this point? What's the structure for that?
Right now, we can spend them peer-to-peer. So basically, anybody who is involved in the network can actually exchange the resources with each other. So we have a couple of members that are not change makers that are kind of offering services. And we're also developing food partnerships with a local grocery store as well as a large grocery entity. So you'll be able to spend your credits within those grocery stores. And we also have a network of spend partners that they're not currently involved on the app, but we're looking to kind of re-engage them to get them back on. We also have a sort of more of an anchor. If you guys are familiar with Public Source, Public Source has also agreed to be in part in order to leverage more business participation. They're offering ads within their newsletters and within their magazine publications so that businesses can actually, when they accept the credits, they have additional places to spend them. But a lot of this is, a lot of this takes, there's a lot of kind of pre-designing of the circuitry that of the currency, excuse me, that has to be kind of built out because, when the business accepts it, they're going to want to have something else that they want to spend it on. And there's a lot that's kind of delving into a lot of the larger economic questions. We have some partnerships that are currently in the works that are kind of answers to those, but right now it's primarily focused on kind of peer-to-peer exchanges with some businesses participating here and there, but we're continuing to build out the network, and as we do, and as the new app becomes available, that will increase our ability. It'll increase the efficiency by which we do that as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think I am about. Is there more question?
There's a question from Mark on the chat.
Oh,
yeah, I was lurking quietly and dropping in my question. Thanks. Dan, two quick things. Can you send a time credit to another person in the app like Venmo?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. And is that taxable income?
So it is considered taxable income. So each of the individuals would get a 1099-M, 1099 miscellaneous for the services that they exchange. That is only starts to happen beyond $600. We're still trying to figure out. There's a lot of systemic issues that are, and this is kind of something that we're trying to work through, which is. But it's just kind of an aspect of our current system, and it kind of illustrates the systems that are in place that kind of keep people in poverty. But there are many people that want to participate that are worried about kind of earning more credits because that might bump them into another income bracket.
Yeah.
And if that bumps them into another income bracket, they might be receiving food stamps. Suddenly they don't have their food stamps, and suddenly the value that they'd be getting would actually drop off. So they actually have an incentive not to earn more because they lose certain benefits once they go beyond a certain threshold. So there are a lot of challenges that we're trying to work through with this because, it's, unless you can get somebody, kind of earning, a lot more so that, that kind of benefit that they would get from receiving kind of welfare benefits from whatever their current income status is. We're kind of like being very cautious about like working with lower kind of very lower income individuals, but that's eventually something that we want to tackle. And it's also something, it's an issue that we want to raise just as a question just in general, like look at all of the kind of barriers that keep people in poverty. Look at all of, there's a reason why, there's so many, there's generational poverty is because there's a lot of systems that keep people in poverty. we did engage, and we had conversations with one of a local district magistrate about using the currency to actually pay for certain fees that have been, that people are otherwise unable to pay for because they're earning money to the tune that they can only pay for, basic goods and services and can't pay off the fines that, they have received. So there is some conversation about being able to use these time credits for those things. And we're also working with local municipalities as well. The eventual end goal would be to have these credits being able to be accepted for taxes. And there is some precedent for that. This isn't like just general kind of aspirations. There's a lot of actually economic precedent. There's a lot of movement among economic circles to actually start having local government agencies and even the federal agent, the IRS, actually accept local currency and payment for taxes.
That's awesome. Thank you. It sounds like you've thought about it a lot, and I think the potential is extraordinary. So I'm super glad that you had a chance to talk with everybody here. And I have more questions, but I always have more questions. So I'll ask somebody else's question here. What incentivizes, was this already asked? Andrew asks, what incentivizes a business to accept the credits? I'm a little confused about the economic side of this.
Yeah, so it's basically creating another channel of revenue for the business. So the more partners we get on board, that's more places for the businesses to spend their credits. And that helps develop local supply chains. So by any credit that we create, anytime we mint a credit, we're actually creating economic expansion because that is money that didn't exist that now exists. So businesses are actually accepting these credits on top of the revenue that they would already be getting. So it's just that it's spendable locally. So what the onus becomes on us to help, look at the business's supply chain and see like where are instances that instead of, buying these goods from Walmart or from Aldi or what have you, are there local places that you can get your produce from? So we've taken a strategic angle and like kind of focused on food first because, we think that's, forgive the pun, a lower hanging fruit because there are a lot of people already engaged in growing. And we really want to use the currency to help, move it from just community gardening from community gardening to community food production, so that we're actually supplying local grocers and supplying grocery stores with food that people can purchase, that any change maker, any member can actually purchase. And that's what the goal of our work in Hazelwood is.
Super. There was another, somebody else asked, Sean, or Maren, did you already ask this? If someone is interested in not having recompense and helping on involvement?
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit.
Thanks.
That just, I think the word volunteer was bandied about too much.
Yeah.
And Ilona was pegging on that.
Just a brief comment on that. It really seems like this form of exchange is attempting to be symbiotic. Volunteering so often is one way, which I think I just barely had time to touch on. But I think that the more symbiotic a system is, the more ecologically viable it is, right? And so our current currency and economic system is this blunt instrument which attempts to, set up exchange systems that are very exploitive and extractive. And so altruism too can end up not being sustainable because of the strains on the people who are attempting to give, sometimes without receiving that back and forth flow. So I'm just so impressed with, I remember you telling me about this way back when, Daniel, when I was still at the Thomas Merton Center a lot as community organizer for Pittsburgh Public Transit. So and the way that, the composting, that's also such a great expression of the metaphor. It's so directly connected in terms of, so thank you so much for your work.
Yes.
You're welcome. And if anybody is interested in, well, first off, thank you so much for Helen for the kind words. But if anybody's interested in, becoming involved, feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, my skip on through here. Contact information is here. So my email is this, info@involvement.io.
Okay, well, awesome. Thanks again, Dan, for
You're welcome.
presenting and also for creating that amazing system that has so much potential. I'm gonna cut in now in between some talks here and just mention a few events that are coming up. And one of them, well, two of them are actually happening. Well, one of them has everybody gotten or at least applied for their mail-in ballot? Let me get my video. So hopefully that's happening. And I'm so glad that Pennsylvania got that going. And Ellie, I will be announcing the two vegan things very shortly.
And Diane and Gabriel have a hand up too.
Okay. Do they have to do with, yeah, I'm not seeing the hands, but.
Gabriel dropped his hand. Diane?
Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to quickly say that Daniel, how incredibly impressed I am with what you're doing and how much it lifts my mood, certainly in the face of this virus. I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to say, however, that for all of us and everything that we're doing and all the people we're interacting with, please remember there is nothing but food and shelter that is more important between now and November. For people, every single person, to make sure that they encourage others to send in those mail-in ballots. It is so huge. It's everything. And with all the work that we do, we often don't focus on that. And I just needed to add that right now. It's absolutely essential. And every single person, the funding, being in government as I am, the funding for all kinds of things, including all the things we care about, are going to depend on who's got the power in 2021. So that was my comment. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that's
Thank
why
you.
I put that. And I have an entry on Marin's list that I've had a bunch of them. Get your mail-in ballot, get your mail-in ballot, get your mail-in ballot with the link. And the last one, mid-May, get your mail-in ballot in all caps. So hopefully the primary, there are some very important races in different districts. But it's good to have at least the system here will be tried out. I shudder to think of all the states where they've already had their primary before the pandemic hit, and they don't have a law for mail-in ballots. Because Pennsylvania, the system is brought to its knees and is way behind, and I don't know how well it will happen, but at least we'll be able to have it figured out by November, we hope.
Well, and we have such a huge senior population that we all have to remember that many of those people do not have access to a computer.
Yeah, and ballots
it's
for
huge.
ballots for patients, which before the mail-in ballot was possible, ballots for patients was invaluable, which was this program developed locally to get emergency absentee ballots for people in hospitals who couldn't predict that they were going to be in the hospital. And that is continuing at some level also because there's still people who won't be able to deal with the whole application thing. So anyway, I'm just going to scroll through in chronological order here, starting tomorrow at 1 in the afternoon, and all of these events are virtual. Tomorrow at 1 in the afternoon, the Pittsburgh Vegan Society is going to, and we have one of the directors of that here, Ellie Gordon, and we also have the star of the show, I think. Are you still here? Yes, I think Rhea and Josh Humma are going to be hosting an in-home demo of all kinds of sustainable greener living practices that they do. And people come to our salons and we do a bunch of things, and people come to our house and there's things being demonstrated all along, but and sometimes we talk about them and sometimes we don't, but they're going to spend a couple of hours just focused on doing that. And I know that it's being sponsored by the Pittsburgh Vegan Society, but it goes far beyond what they're eating. It has to do with how they're eating and how they're shopping and how they're washing and everything. So that's tomorrow at 1. It is on Marin's list. All of these things are on Marin's list, and everyone on this call should know about Marin's list, but so do you need to say anything more, either Ellie or Rhea, about that, or is that pretty good? The link is on Marin's list.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And then also on the 28th of May.
That's the 28th of May. I'm going through in chronological order. Did I not tell you that I would be doing this? Okay.
Sorry.
You're skipping ahead. I'm trying to be efficient here. So
I just wanted to share that, my husband and I will be providing the presentation tomorrow. And this is our trash from 5 weeks for 2 adults in our house. So we'll kind of just be checking out our pantry and our bathrooms and our hygiene routine, and I'll be sharing methods and recipes and resources.
And because there's 2 of them, they can also do things like stick things in the chat. So it's going to be an action-packed session. Yes. So that's really great.
Will you record it and share it after?
Yeah, I asked her about that because we have a meeting of Ohio Valley Environmental Resistance at that same time. So I might try to drop in a little bit late, but I won't be able to be there for the whole thing. And I'm eager to see how you approach it. Okay, another thing that I mentioned before is this Green New Deal discussion group, which is framed around essays in this book by Naomi Klein, On Fire, The Burning Case for a Green New Deal. And, but it goes into great depth on many issues that affect our region and that our region can in turn affect. And as I said, Helen is one of the main organizers of this, and there's a session tomorrow and then one more session in the initial series that was planned on the 31st. Both of the, that's on Marin's list under tomorrow's date, and I'll shift it at the end of the month. Helen, do you have anything more you'd like to say about the Green New Deal discussion group? And I have that on Marin's list with a link to the Zoom registration. Okay.
Great. No, I don't think so. I think we just Marin's going to be there too again. So, yes. So thank you so much. This has been such an amazing series, and I feel really honored to have been part of this conversation today, Marin.
Okay. On the 19th, I think there's a few things on the 19th, but and they overlap a bit, but if you're just participating, you might be able to do most of each of them anyway. One is a webinar about orphaned and abandoned wells. We know that in the frack fields of Pennsylvania and other fracking states, there's a lot of wells which, when they stop being productive, they might cap them, but even, or plug them. But even with that, there are still risks. If they haven't leaked by that point, there will be pressure building up. And I have heard it said by people who work in the field that pretty much every well will leak sooner or later, the well casing. So Lori Barr of Save Our Streams will be talking about that. And that's, I think, at 8 o'clock on the 19th. And then another thing is the beginning of another series happening sort of like if you take a salon and you have the talks one day and then the discussion another day because you ran out of time for the discussion, they're setting it up to account for that. And it's called Tackling the A to Z Impacts of Plastic. And actually, why don't I share my screen? Nope. I don't think I did that right. Are you seeing Marin's list here? I think I clicked on the wrong window.
Yes.
You are, okay. So this is Marin's list. This is a place to go to find out about various events, including but not limited to my events. So here is tackling the A to Z impacts of plastic. And it's going to start with Ned Katire, and who has been he's a physician who's been very active in advocating for public health issues especially around fracking and plastics. And then Julie Jermansky of Desmog Blog. And he's a pediatrician. He has a blog called Pediablog. And then Julie has Desmog Blog. So they'll have talks on Tuesday, and then Thursday will be more discussion oriented. That is there on Marin's list. On May 28th, Ellie and the Pittsburgh Vegan Society is going to be viewing a couple of, having a Zoom video watching party, short documentary films on animals and food, 73 cows and the farm in my backyard. And there's a Facebook event page there that you can link to. Penn Environment has been for years now holding a great big climate action lobby day where people travel to Harrisburg from all across the state. They get people in every district to talk to their policymakers about climate and the need for action. And this year, naturally, like everything else, they are taking it online. And so the image didn't come through because I stuck it in quickly, but at any rate, that's Penn Environment's Climate Action Lobby Day logo. And so the links are there, and I encourage you to sign up. You won't be meeting by yourself. You'll be meeting with a bunch of other constituents, some of whom will have done this before. So it's a really great way to get your feet wet without even having to ride a bus for 4 hours. So how could it be better? On June 5th, Penn State Extension has been doing all kinds of online things, and this was just brought to my attention recently. They're doing a webinar on effective environmental outreach strategies, and I'm sure with attention being paid to how to work in the age of a pandemic. And then one last event, and when you go on Marin's list, I know there's months and stuff over on the side here, but since we're in May, and I have an event in November, I kind of muck about with the dates so that they all show next to it. So these last two events are in June, and then I do host house concerts every so often. We'll see what the situation is. I don't know for sure that this will be happening, but I have a house concert with Louis Collins scheduled. So you can keep an eye on Marin's list as well as all your other sources to see what's going on. And it is always the primary place where information on salons is. So even if I haven't gotten out the Eventbrite notice for a given salon, whatever information I have, I will post there. So I try to get all my I's dotted and my T's crossed before I send an email over the course of 2 days to 3,700 people. So the next salon will be in June. I haven't yet figured, but probably sometime around the middle of the month. It's going to be the 101st salon, and I'm going to call it Econ 101, and it's going to be talking about the economics of fossil fuels and some of the economics of renewables. So and then we'll be following that up in July with another financial related salon on divestment and investment, social investment and local investment, and maybe public banking. These are the next two coming up, and I won't have my usual worries of everybody traveling in June, July, August. So hopefully we'll have a great crowd and lots of good discussion. So that is it for my events listing. Does anyone else, let me unshare. And if we're in gallery mode, does anybody else have, oh, and Diane Peterson put in so the links, people involved have added the links right in the chat. So we have the links for the 2 vegan events tomorrow on Green Living Tactics by Rhea and Josh, and on the 28th, the film viewing party. And Helen put the registration link for the Zoom meeting for the Green New Deal discussion group, and Diane posted here the links relevant to the plastics, impact of plastics series. Anything else that I haven't highlighted that someone knows is coming up? If not, we can move right along to, let's see, who was going to be next? Okay, I think was Kacy. Oh, Kacy, why don't we put, whether or not she was scheduled before, why don't we put Kacy now, because she has to leave soon. And she is the, oh, and the Frackland tour, link above. Okay, Diane put a link to a Frackland tour that I'm not sure. Diane, post that, I don't see it. So there's a Frackland tour, but I don't know the date. Diane, do you want to say something about it quickly? Diane Peterson? Unmute yourself wherever you are. Diane, I'm unmuting you, Diane. Unmute.
Hi. So basically, I'll just put it on the chat again in the bottom. You can see it. So it's, yeah, please share that message widely, because I know not everyone gets a chance to go on a Frackland tour. It's, you know, a bit of transportation, it's a bit of time, but now you can do it virtually and you can share it, and it can go globally to see what we're actually putting up with here. So that would be fantastic. Thank you so much.
That is often. Put the link in the, there it is. Okay, perfect. Thank you. And I will get that onto Marin's list also. Okay, so we will now welcome Kacy McGill, who is one of the organizers of the, I'm going to unmute you, Kacy. You said you were here till about 7. So, and do we have video for you and or some slides?
Yeah, I can share my screen.
Perfect. Yes. So, as we all know, some of the hardest hit and the most immediately hit people financially were restaurant workers, because restaurants were at first shut down and then some of them reopened for takeout, but that's a whole lot of wait staff and table bussers and dishwashers that don't have a job. I saw something early on that had to do with sending tips that you might have paid to your favorite restaurants and your favorite wait people. Is that involved in your effort?
So we collaborated with that folk.
Okay, all right. So you can fill us in and
yeah, totally.
Thank you, Kacy McGill.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for this conversation. And this, the folks that have asked really great questions, along with the other organizations doing really great work in Pittsburgh. It's really exciting to do this type of work in a lot of different ways, but it's more noteworthy if we're able to connect resources together and connect with folks that are doing Pitt Mutual Aid, making sure our university friends are doing great work, collaborating with 412 Food Rescue. So this is a really great, 100th meeting. So just talking a little bit about Pittsburgh Restaurant Workers Aid. I am a restaurant worker. I've worked in several different restaurants in the Pittsburgh region. I've done nonprofit work. I've used to do a lot of environmental work. So hi folks from the environmental world. And so I think what's important to say is 2 months ago on March 15th, due to the COVID-19 crisis, dine-in facilities were closed down. And there wasn't necessarily a plan for restaurant workers. Restaurant workers in the Allegheny region comprise of one of the largest workforces. We're also one of the most unrepresented workforces. We don't have labor representation in most cases. A lot of folks work for small restaurants, and there's a lot of issues that were kind of growing, and we were working on pretty much paycheck to paycheck, tips earned that day. I had a couple shifts when I was a barista where I needed to earn $25 in order to pay my gas, or I wouldn't be able to literally drive home. So this has been a situation that's kind of been brewing for a really long time. And after Sunday, March 15th, when there was no I guess, safety net for us established federally or in a statewide sort of situation or countywide, we gravitated to each other. So we started a Facebook group along with a couple of my friends who ended up being now current board members. We started a Facebook group called the Greater Pittsburgh Restaurant Workers Mutual Aid group, which now has over 3,000 members. And the first thought was to be able to share resources, ways that we could help each other out, ways that we could support each other. We had almost immediately a request for aid form and a form to offer form. So we would be able to connect folks to each other. It almost immediately became clear that folks needed food assistance and resources, diapers, pet food, stuff like that. So within 2 days, we had folks from Bloomfield, folks in the industry, folks from the greater Pittsburgh area, literally going to my home in Bloomfield and dropping off items. And so what we would do is we would have people drop off these food items. We would leave it on the porch until they left, bring them in, put them in my living room in Bloomfield, sanitize everything, then wait a day, and then we were able to send it out in care packages. So that was kind of the operation for a week, and then I was like, I don't have enough fridge space, and I don't have the capacity to do this all on our own, so we asked for help. One of the most important things, mutual aid is a really great resource, but when you're in a community that's largely affected by this, we learned that you need to ask for help, and that's really difficult in some ways. So we ended up talking to Pitt Mutual Aid, we ended up talking to Bloomfield folks. I reached out to my city council friend, Deborah Gross. She's not currently my city councilwoman, but she used to be. She secured us a free space with the Preeminent Center, and we just moved there. And then we've been doing food distribution activities since, I guess, March 22nd, officially there, where we've been able to deliver, I believe, over 400 care packages to families in Allegheny County and Westmoreland County and Beaver County and Ohio and West Virginia, all over the place, with just a team of volunteers that usually comprise of unemployed restaurant workers. So the community has been really great. We've been able to kind of build up, especially with asking for help from like 412 Food Rescue. They've been an amazing partnership with us, where they've been able to give us bread that's always requested, produce that's always requested, and they're also helping us occasionally with volunteer work. We've partnered with Pedagogy. Pedagogy is a local pet and pet supply store in Shadyside, and they deliver, I believe, they deliver us food every week, and we were able to, as of yesterday, help 136 households and 4,000 pounds of food and 1,248 cans of food. So we've been able to like really gear up and in like a really powerful way. We've also, through moving so fast and so quickly because we had to support our restaurant community, we were able to get fiscal sponsorship through our friends at NSR. So New Sun Rising is a really great nonprofit. They offer fiscal sponsorship. So we have a 501c3 status, so we can have conversations with potential foundations. We can have more conversations with our friends that were previously supporting our industry, like liquor and beer reps. And we've been doing really great outreach to those folks. And the 501c3 status, in our opinion, makes it even more accessible for this project to go into long-term goals. And we know, as we mentioned in this conversation, a lot of our work here, and not only in the restaurant world, not only in like Pittsburgh community, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of folks that don't necessarily know what next week's going to look like. but I think this is the opportunity where we're able to kind of like try to predict. Right now, we mentioned housing. Housing is a huge issue for a lot of our friends, excuse me, in the group. So immediately, we also started the financial opportunity, like emergency cash grant. So we were able to raise $38,000 for our restaurant workers. So when we initially started this in March, within 3 days, 500 applicants applied for this aid, which is a whole lot of folks. And we were hoping to just give $150 small emergency grants to folks. So that puts us at $60,000 as a goal. Our original goal was $20,000, so we had to raise it. We've been steadily climbing to $60,000, and we've also started dispersing those funds. And we're hoping to get to our goal of $60,000 by the end of May, open the conversation up again, and then be able to deliver more financial assistance to folks in our group. Besides that, and all that daily operational work, we are also starting an outreach program through our Facebook group, but we're able to have conversations. We have a lot of folks that we're trying to tap into potentially to act as like restaurant captains. So I don't know how many folks have restaurant experience on this call, but a restaurant can be, especially in Pittsburgh, a very isolating culture. You have a lot of really great friends in a certain restaurant, but you might not know the restaurant down the street, or you might not know the restaurant across the city. So we're trying to have a restaurant captain kind of be the leader and acting like the leader, so they can disseminate information, resources, unemployment compensation, one of the most stressful things for tipped employees and restaurant employees currently, in ways that they can get food, care packages, and stuff like that. And once we hit the yellow phases, where we're going to start developing conversations that are going to be hard to approach owners, feeling uncomfortable about returning to work, going to a place that doesn't provide enough PPE like equipment, and just overall just money specifically. I know there's a lot of restaurant owners that are reaching out to me personally with questions about what they should do with their PPP grants, because that brings up a conversation. We're not at a level right now where we could have restaurants operating at a full phase. And if they hired everyone back, the people that they hire would be earning less than unemployment. So all of these are really interesting conversations that we're trying to gear for long term. And we're just trying to, on a daily operation, just check in with folks. We have Thursday phone banks where we ask those questions. We've had really great feedback. We were able to send some folks to United Way or Single Stop, which 412 Food Rescue has been doing an amazing partnership with them. And it's been kind of like a learning process. Currently, we're sitting at like a 7-person board, which all the board members have restaurant experiences, or they work in a restaurant currently. And as I say a lot, and I truly mean it, restaurant workers are some of the best organizers out there. They're the most capable. If you've ever worked in a restaurant climate, you know that you have to be on top of things at all points during a shift. You have to work together to get through a busy shift so you can like survive, and you have to work as a team to overcome obstacles like this. So I think the build of us starting a Facebook group 2 months ago, going from 0 to 1,000 people in less than 2 days, is really like, this need has always been there. Restaurant workers can do amazing work and always have been doing amazing work. And now we need your support more than ever. So I'll leave it at that. And if anyone has questions.
I have a question, Kacy. Right now, if people want to help, this is Jen, England, by the way. If people want to help, what's the best thing they can do? Is it donate food, donate money? Do you need volunteers to help deliver food? What's your need?
Donating money would be the most effective way to help us. Currently, as I said before, our volunteers are very great, and we do have a huge volunteer base that's continuing to grow. Our daily obstacle currently is just having enough food to give to everyone. We have such a big need for food. We're also looking into partnering with more restaurants because we currently do a Friday night dinner program with our friends at Scratch and the Vandal and the Warren. They're doing amazing work, but we're trying to make that like a little bit more of, we're trying to spread that a little bit, spread love, so we're able to think of long-term solutions. So donating items like in-kind items like dairy, we always need milk and eggs, bread, canned goods. All of those items can be dropped off at the Irma Freeman Center, which is 5006 Penn Avenue in Bloomfield on Tuesdays through Sundays between 1 and 5. Thank you, Jen, for really pointing that out.
And thank you, Kacy, both for the presentation and for staying a few minutes over your time limit that you had, and for all that amazing getting things to people who need them work.
Yes, and it's, as I said before, when we're looking at long term, and stay tuned for this, I mean, when people are already talking about how to like really start organizing around this. And I don't think when we return to the restaurant industry, there's predictions out there that's saying that 70% of restaurants might close, which we're really hoping that doesn't happen, because honestly, I love bartending and I love being a barista. And I know that's a very selfish thing for me to say, but we love our jobs. We love working. I love cooking. And looking to the future, like working for working standards, like paid sick leave, we have to have that. The tip system, as was mentioned earlier, it's not that great. It's a very old-fashioned, it's a very old-fashioned system that needs to be like updated as soon as we get back, because this isn't going to, there's probably going to be a resurgence. There's definitely going to be climate change issues, and we just want to get ready for that. So thank you guys so much I'll answer some questions. I'll stay online for a couple minutes, but I really thank you for the time.
Thank you for being with us.
A couple points, Mayor. Dan Little from InvolveMint says, one thing I will point out is that restaurants accepting local currency that can be made more readily available than US dollars can supplement workers' income in local currency. So that's kind of a cool thing that he mentioned. Also, Kacy, I'm curious about what are the conditions that we really need to try to make here in Pittsburgh for restaurants to thrive post-pandemic? I recognize you're working really hard and doing brilliant work to make it during the pandemic to try to keep things afloat, but I'm really wondering, what does the industry think that it needs to just be able to, flourish after all this wild time ends?
So that's a really interesting question. And that's a really difficult question as well. So there's a lot of, the restaurant industry, as I always put it, is like, it's a community that a lot of bigger issues happen. There's a lot of issues in the restaurant community that exist everywhere, but this is the environment that it is very prevalent, and it's also very it's very extreme. So paid sick leave is always something that I've worked plenty of restaurant gigs where I've worked very sick that I shouldn't have, but I wouldn't make enough money to survive. So those incentives, I rocked did an amazing job at pushing that legislation through and working with folks to bring out that legislation, but we need paid sick leave like now, and not accrued after we hit 35 hours per week. So that's another one. sexual assault and sexual harassment happen frequently in the restaurant industry. Every restaurant that I've ever worked at, and I've worked at good restaurants, there's been several instances of sexual assault, whether it was from a customer, whether it was from a manager, or whether it was from a fellow employee. So those are conversations to have. Addiction's also really prevalent in the restaurant community. So we really need to talk about having conversations with our restaurant friends, checking in on them in general. Having programs specifically for restaurant workers is really great. Our mental health, we don't have a lot of really great healthcare options, so always advocating for that. As a customer, I think what a lot of folks can do is always support local restaurants and local restaurants that you know are supporting their employees. We like to highlight the better ones because I think it's more helpful as a community to shine on the good partners than spread like bad partners. So I mean, Mixtape, for example, Mixtape is fighting currently an issue with whether they're going to be able to reopen, and they're a local par, they're amazing. Katie and Elaine are great, but right now PLCB doesn't have, I mean, that's changing in the next couple of days, but they're not allowed to sell cocktails until on very specific cocktails to go. So there's a lot of things that we could do to help the restaurant industry. You can always support like local persons of color owned, women owned restaurants, and that is incredible as well, because there's a lot of them, and there's a lot of them that aren't are maybe going to be shut down, which is really unfortunate. Yeah, hopefully that answered your question. That's a really big question for with a lot of uncertainty.
You took it to the next level. I was thinking of two things. One was like, what kind of pop-up restaurants might we see afterwards? And that would be kind of horrible and exciting all at the same time. I think I'm leaning more towards exciting, but you took it to such a better place. I'm so glad you answered it that way. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing to point out just for the general folks, while supporting takeout and delivery is really great, especially since you're supporting restaurants potentially staying open past this. I would definitely recommend, please do not use Grubhub because they're taking a lot of the monies from local restaurants. Please go to them directly. Also, if you have a bartender, a barista, a server, if you went to a restaurant like frequently, reach out to them, check in to see if they're okay. Their information is definitely on the Pittsburgh tip jar. Put some money towards them because they need it. That's a really great way to help as well.
There's a question from Anaïs. Thank you, Kacy. Anaïs asks, Kacy, do you have a list of good restaurants to support?
I do. I can provide one offline. I have a couple restaurants that I could highlight now. The Warren's fantastic. Arnold's Tea is fantastic. Honestly, a place that I would go is Jen England can talk a little bit about this. The Community Takeout restaurants, fantastic restaurants, also tasty food. The Vandals have been working really well with us to support us, along with Every Day's a Sunday. Every Day's a Sunday is across the street from us, and they've been handing out free meals to the Garfield community since we started, and we've been actually just sharing resources since March. So those are really great restaurants. I really like Legume. I know a lot of folks, a lot of their staff is volunteering for us, and Trevitz just gave us like 60 pounds of coffee. So I'm pretty jazzed about that. That's what I'm drinking right now. So yeah.
Super. Marin notes, I note that IBC, Independent Brewing Company in Squirrel Hill, uses hardly any plastic in their takeout packaging, compostable paperboard clamshells, which I think is freaking awesome. I'm also wondering, this is something that others may have considered too, but you'd be a great place for this question, Kacy, which is, there are restaurants that I certainly want to keep around, but I don't want to visit right now, and I'm not really interested in doing restaurant takeout. Is there a way to like pay now for food later in a way, or invest in your local restaurant where we can kind of say, hey, look, we want you here. I'll pay my once a month meal plan while you're in COVID just to keep you around so that when you're here, there may be a really cool way to keep some restaurants
A lot of
afloat.
restaurants are doing gift certificates.
Okay.
For that
Okay,
very
that's great.
reason.
Thanks, Maren.
And then if you don't wind up redeeming it, it was a donation.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah,
But you have the option of redeeming it.
The gift cards are a really great way. There's also some restaurants with GoFundMe's and such, in asking for support, in really creative ways. I know Don from Scratch is running up the stairs in like a time period, and people are donating to him that way. So he's challenging himself to run upstairs really fast.
Starathon?
Yeah, a starathon.
That's great.
So it's a very Pittsburgh-centric idea, but
Oh, like steps,
we're
like sidewalk
working with-
steps on the hillsides?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
cool. That's fun.
So it's Pittsburgh stairs, so it's kind of fun. Another thing that we're kind of looking into is working with our artist friends, because they're obviously also affected by COVID-19, and looking at like creative ways to do like a gallery showing and having it all donated to a couple different charities and stuff like that. We just started 2 months ago, so we're just kind of, every day is a new experience.
Yeah. Kacy, is there any possibility of becoming a centralized clearinghouse for all the sites or the restaurants that might allow for online purchases of gift cards? I could see people just going to that spot and just shopping for their future and investing in restaurants, knowing with the caveat right up front that, look, if this restaurant closes, your money will not be returned, but this is how we contribute to share the load. I wonder if you've considered that.
I haven't, and it's a conversation to have.
It's not a request, it's just an inquiry, good, do with it what you want.
Yeah, one of the things that we've been doing, and I mean, this is again down the road talking about, but we're trying to make it, like, we love restaurant owners that are doing right things, but there's a lot of bad restaurant owners out there. So we are trying to make our community a little bit more restaurant worker focused, but we realistically know if those businesses don't exist, then we won't have jobs, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's a conversation to have with, you're the first person to mention it, so we could potentially ask that to the board.
Gabriel comments also with a suggestion. He says Cashable app. Cashable allows you to sell and buy gift cards online with no physical plastic cards. So that's a really cool idea. Thanks, Gabriel.
Excellent.
Yes, thank you so much.
Any other questions? Or have I missed anything? Gabriel shouts out to Arnold's Tea.
Right.
Gift certificates are great. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I don't know why I hadn't, but that's great. I never buy them, but maybe I will buy some now.
And thank you so much, Helen, for helping to think up this salon. I think it was really great to get all these ideas and initiatives together.
The people, everybody.
Yeah. And we have one more amazing people.
I know. I'm
one more
so
amazing
sorry I have
people.
to go, Jen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's okay, Helen.
We're not doing too bad on time. I'm sort of surprised. Last month, I thought I was not doing too bad on time, and I had left out one person from my thinking at that moment. So that was rather terrible. But I mentioned before 412 Food Rescue, which was founded by Giselle Fetterman and Leah Lizarando. Quite a number of years ago now, and I think Jen has been with it since pretty much the beginning.
Day one, yeah.
Yeah, and really helping run the operations. I guess you're the senior operations manager of food.
Something like that.
Something, anyway. So even early on when it was just done by text, Jen was usually the one on the end of the text.
Yeah.
So she would post, hey, there's a bunch of surplus food here, who can get it and take it to there? And now they have this great app, which is has been proliferated into other cities, and they're stepping up to the plate for the additional needs that are coming with the COVID pandemic. So Jen and 412 Food Rescue.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm going
And
to
thanks
share.
again for Kacy, just before you go, because I know you have to race. So thanks again. And that's all fantastic work. All these people are doing such amazing work. So I'll shut up.
Kacy, I sent you an email. Check it out.
Okay.
Thank you, I saw it. I love it.
Okay.
Okay,
I will talk to you all very soon. I hope you have a really nice Saturday and take time for yourself. So important.
Okay. Yeah. And after Jen's talk, we'll first address questions that have to do with that, and then the discussion can continue as long as it feels like continuing. And I mentioned that if people want to see their way around the garden and see the big change that is happening around here, we can do that afterwards too, because it's light out pretty late now. So take it away, Jen.
Great. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, maybe I'm going to share my screen. There we go. You are seeing that, correct? And where is the present button? So this is where the fact that I use Zoom every single day, like 16 times, is not showing because I can't remember how to present a.
Look down at the bottom of your screen. I see a little little rectangle that might be the presentation mode.
Not that, not that.
Of course,
Your screen is
Present. There it is.
Upper right
below the star.
Right below the star, yeah, where it says present.
It's next to share.
Yep, right next to the yellow share button, just to the left of the yellow share button.
Oh, there it is.
Yep.
Okay, I had it covered. That's why. All right.
Yay, we have presentation by committee. I love it.
Crowdsource.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, so I'm just going to do a quick introduction of 412 Food Rescue, just in case anyone isn't familiar with it. As Maren said, we started in 2015. Giselle Fetterman and Leia Lazarando are the magnificent brains behind it, and I have been the workhorse behind it for many days.
Both are important.
Indeed. So at 412 Food Rescue, we believe that good food belongs to people, not landfills. As I'm sure most of you know, 40% of the food that we produce in this country goes to waste. Meanwhile, food waste in a landfill is really bad for the environment. It produces a tremendous amount of methane and greenhouse gas. If it were a country, it would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gas in the world. So it's to our benefit to not throw food away. And when we're throwing away good food, we're also exacerbating another problem. 12%, 12.7% of the population faces hunger on a daily basis. And that's when there is a pandemic and 30% unemployment. That number, of course, goes up when you're talking about households with children or female-headed households. On a good day, on an average day, 30% of female-headed households are food insecure. So you can only imagine what it's like right now when a lot of women who are, for example, in the service industry are out of work. At 412 Food Rescue, we use a point-to-point model. The problem with food waste is that it happens in a highly distributed network. So if you think about it, it's happening 100 pounds here, 100 pounds there, at every Giant Eagle, every Target, every Costco, every restaurant, every food source around the country, including schools, I mean, things that you wouldn't even think of, hospitals, is wasting food every day, but in small amounts, in amounts that it doesn't make sense to send a truck for. So the answer is to send volunteers. So we were sort of a mutual aid network before COVID even hit. That's the idea, is that you get 100 people picking up 100 pounds of food and delivering it to 100 different places. And in that way, you're not only mitigating the food waste going into the landfill, but you're also helping to feed people. And we found that because the food is going direct from the source to where it's getting used, we can take food that's highly perishable, that doesn't have a long life, because it's not going to sit in a pantry, or it's not going to a food bank and then to a food pantry and then to somebody's home. It's going directly to where it needs to go. So that really optimizes the life of that food. And so as Maren mentioned, we developed an app because when we started this, we were in fact doing this by Facebook and text message and Instagram and Twitter and however else we could possibly manage to find people to do our rescues. And that was great. That worked really well. We had people come out of the woodwork to help us, but it still limited the amount we could do. It takes a lot of human intervention to make those kind of rescues happen. And, you know, it becomes expensive. It's prohibitively expensive to employ enough people to rescue all that food, even if you're managing it, you know, from a central location, unless you have technological help. And so that's what our app does. And it works basically very similar to a rideshare program where the food is the passenger. We get a notification that there's food to be rescued. We match it with a nonprofit partner, and then we put that into the app, and it lets our volunteers know, hey, there's food here that needs to go there. And if you are in the area, you can make that happen. And this was a fantastic system, and it worked really great. And then COVID hit and everything changed. And so the first thing we did when COVID hit, and I'm going to spend most of the rest of my time now talking about what we've done since COVID, and how we're pivoting to meet the need, because this is an unprecedented level of need. The first thing we did was we actually stopped using volunteers for a little bit of time, because we didn't know at first anything. You know, it wasn't clear how dangerous it was to be out in public, what the impact was going to be of having all of those volunteers out there. A lot of our volunteers are over the age of 60 or have pre-existing health conditions. And so the first thing we did, we wanted them to be safe, is we shut down most of our volunteer rescues. Into that stepped our fleet operators. And I think it's really important to recognize them here, because they put themselves in harm's way every day. Not a single one of them blinked or questioned at all. Our fleet rescues went through the roof as they were taking up as much of the slack as they could for the volunteers. And they're the ones that were really insistent that we need to keep doing what we're doing. We can't stop rescuing food and getting it out to the community, because people need us. And they were seeing this. They were on the front lines, and the partners that normally were relieved and happy to see the food were really a lot more desperate and in need, because the need in the community went through the roof. As Kacy said, on March 15th or whatever day it was that everything shut down, just thinking the number of people that were suddenly unemployed, and how many people live paycheck to paycheck and just did not have any way to put food in their cupboards. And you think about restaurant workers. A lot of restaurant workers eat at work, and so their cupboards weren't full. You know, there might be a few things in there for the weekends or for their days off, but one of their main sources of food also disappeared. So we felt the need very early on. We adjusted pretty quickly to make sure that we could be delivering food to our partners with volunteers as well as our fleet. But, and I should say, we're also getting into the slides that we have not been developing for 4 years. These are the ones that I did in an hour before I got online today. So if I forget the order of them, please forgive me here. At the same time as we shut down volunteering, volunteers came out of the woodwork. We had an incredible uptick in app downloads, not just here, but across the country. You know, you can see Prince William County in Virginia, 256%, Cleveland, 100%, Philly, 200%, San Francisco, 125%, and in Pittsburgh, 140%, 46% increase in our previous quarter downloads. And that all happened in March. That was like the last 2 weeks in March. And you look at our April numbers, which are not on here, and they're the same. So at the same time as we were pulling back and saying we can't put people in harm's way, other people were stepping forward and saying, no, we recognize that the need is there and we want to help. So we really, after about a week or two of thinking, well, maybe we weren't going to be using volunteers at all, we realized we just had to rethink how we were doing this, because we needed to give people that opportunity to participate and to help. And we needed the extra hands to get food where it's going. We also had to change the way we're doing things with our partners. So normally what we do is we distribute to a lot of different nonprofit partners, and then they distribute. But folks like our housing sites, they would have people come into their community rooms, and the food would be distributed there. They shut down. Within the first week, they shut down. And our drivers were very insistent on saying, we can't not bring food to these communities. A lot of these communities, the housing sites, HACP, Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh, Allegheny County Housing Authority, they're very isolated. They're in transit deserts, they're in food deserts, and they're populated sometimes entirely by seniors, by people with health issues, by people that don't have cars, a lot of the people that have been laid off. So the need was skyrocketing. At the same time, our ability to do our job there was disappearing. We quickly found community partners that were willing to pack bags. So we would drop the food off, they would put it into bags, and then we would go door to door and deliver the food. This was really important because it eliminated the congregant distributions so that we were able to actually get food to people, but it also meant that suddenly we were providing for the entire community. A lot of times when we would do a distribution in the community room, some people just wouldn't come down. Either they wouldn't or come over to it. They might be at work, they might feel not feel like going down that day, you know, a variety of reasons people wouldn't go. But now we're dropping a bag of food at every single door in every single housing community that we work in. And then there's a program coming up called CFAP, the Coronavirus Food Access Program, I think, that's funded by the federal government. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but that is going to increase our capacity to meet the needs in these communities that are particularly vulnerable and particularly difficult to get food into. We're also doing home delivery. We had so many calls when we first started from people who were saying, I can't get out to get food. I'm 80 years old and I don't want to go to a food pantry because I have, you know, pre-existing conditions, or I have high blood pressure, or I'm just 80 and I don't want to go because it's dangerous. For me and my family and my parents, they were having their groceries delivered to them. But for a lot of families, that is something that's completely out of reach. And it really critically raised the level of need for a lot of communities. So home delivery is something that we targeted early on as something that we wanted to be able to do for people who are seniors, people who have pre-existing conditions, people who've tested positive, who have COVID and can't get out to the store. So we piloted with the food bank back in March, and we did deliver 200, that's actually not meals, 200 boxes of groceries to senior doorsteps. This was a really easy pivot for us. Our app was developed for donors that were highly distributed. Now we have recipients that are highly distributed. So we just sort of reversed the process. And now we have one volunteer picking up 5 boxes at a location and taking it to 5 houses. And this gave our volunteers also an opportunity to volunteer, not just to help end hunger and to participate with 412 Food Rescue, but also to do so in probably the most socially distant way you can. Folks would go and get their car loaded up with the boxes. There'd be no contact there. Then they'd drive around, they'd follow the directions on their app to each residence, and they would just drop the box on the porch. And so there's no contact volunteering for door to door. So tech changes enabled us to manage that process. And after our pilot, we've expanded that to other community partners, such as the YWCA, Community and School, and YMCA. And we have the capacity to do, well, it's really just dependent on our volunteers, honestly. As many volunteers as we could get, we could do deliveries a week. And then I mentioned CFAP. CFAP is a government program where they are giving money to distributors who usually supply restaurants and institutions, and they are purchasing food from farmers. It's dairy, it's produce, and it's cooked meat products. Those distributors then are donating those boxes of food. And the boxes of food are packed for individual households. So it's very similar to the boxes we would deliver with the food bank or with our other community partners. It's, you know, one box dropped off on somebody's door and they've got food for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. We worked with 10 local donors to put in applications for this. And then when the awards came out, we partnered with 5 national donors. And the result is that we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 boxes a week of food to deliver. That represents a huge increase for us. Normally in a month, we deliver about 300 to 320,000 pounds. Those CFAP boxes alone are 320,000 pounds. And that's what we're going to do a week. So we are going to need lots of volunteers, by the way. Everybody download the app if you don't have it. This also is going to provide us food sources for all of those housing sites that we work with, for all of the door-to-door distributions. We are looking to expand our boxes door-to-door to all of our housing authorities partners: Westmoreland County, Fayette County, Washington County, and Butler County Housing Authority. And can you just imagine the impact it makes that every single door, low-income housing door, gets a box of food every week? It will provide a steady source of food for us. We're also the Restaurant Mutual Aid folks, they're going to be receiving 250 boxes from us a week to deliver. Hugh Lane Foundation, working with HIV positive and other in the LGBTQ community, are receiving boxes from us. So we're able to reach out and work with folks who are serving the most food insecure, most transit insecure, most in need populations, most vulnerable health-wise populations. It's a little bit of a drift from our mission of rescuing food, but to be honest, at this point, what's most critical for us is making sure that people eat. We're still doing the regular rescuing that we've always been doing. That is not going away, and we're continuing to rescue all of those pounds, but a lot of the supply chain has been in flux, and so about half of those pounds have disappeared. So this allows us to be able to not only meet the need that we previously were meeting, but also then continue to go above and beyond and get into those sort of nooks and crannies around the southwestern Pennsylvania where food is so desperately needed. We've also done a school lunch program. Again, one of the most vulnerable sections of the community are children. Many food insecure families rely on school meals to feed their kids throughout the school year, and then during the summer feeding meals. When school shut down, those kids were left high and dry with no source of food. And the schools pretty quickly started distributing food out of the school sites. However, a lot of kids can't reach those, and the uptake of those meals was lower than you would want to see, lower than we know the need is. And so we realize that the best place to get food is to kids at their bus stop, because we know that bus stops are accessible by children by design. They make sure that kids don't have to cross too many streets or big streets to get to their bus stops. Most kids can get to their bus stops by themselves or with a sibling. And so with Michael Keaton's help, we piloted our first program with 3 restaurants, 5 stops, and 500 meals, just to show what impact this could have. To me, this is a great example of, you think about mutual aid, about community coming together. You know, we wanted to prove this would work, and we were meeting a lot of resistance from a lot of places, and Michael Keaton funded the whole thing, and we were able to buy those meals from local restaurants. So we were able to take that money and use it to help support our restaurant partners who have been great partners to us through the years, but now are struggling, and then give that food to kids. And so we distributed that food out of the back of a bus. We expanded it really quickly to include 3 school districts, Stowe Rocks, Pittsburgh Public, and Duquesne. And then we are, as the school districts switch over to summer meal feeding patterns right now, we are also looking to engage in a similar manner. So we're applying for that funding so we can continue to purchase meals, support the Community Kitchen Pittsburgh, support local restaurants, and then potentially also out of our Millville kitchen, make these meals that are frankly a lot higher quality than what summer meals usually provide to kids, and get those out into the community where the kids are, where they can access them, because that's going to continue to be a problem. A good example is that all the summer camps and spray camps are shut down, or spray parks are shut down. Those are where meals are distributed. So a lot of the places kids usually go to get summer meals are closed as well. So that's our school lunch program. It is continuing to evolve. I think our goal for summer is 80,000 meals distributed. And then finally, community takeout. Community takeout is, that's what Kacy mentioned. This is near and dear to my heart, as is Kacy's organization. With this program, our pilot is for 10 weeks. We are purchasing 1,500 meals a week. So it's a total of 15,000 meals over those 10 weeks from participating restaurants. And we chose just a few to start with now, but as we get more funding, we can add more restaurants. We wanted it to make a real impact on the restaurants we're working with. So rather than buying 10 meals at one week and 10 meals from another week, we wanted them to know that they had a steady stream of income. They could rely on that income for the next 10 weeks. We're partnering with Dianoya's, The Warren, Khalil's, Bebe's Kitchen, and Arnold's Tea, and we're in talks with a few more depending on how funding comes through. But again, this program, I love this program because we're supporting those restaurants that have supported us for so long and are really struggling right now, and then that food is going to feed people who need it. And to be honest, some of those meals that they're getting are some of the best meals they will have. I mean, you've got some of the greatest restaurants in the city there producing food for, for people who need it. And it's a really wonderful program. We're really proud of, and we really love, and we're continuing to fundraise for that. So that's something that we are really excited about. And then that is the last program that we have currently that I want to talk about. I will say that as the pandemic and the situation evolves, our sort of motto has been to just meet the need. We change on a dime. Have all of these programs that I've talked about have evolved significantly since day one, but they seem to be, they're addressing what we see as the ongoing and primary needs of the communities that we serve. So I can take questions now. Now I have to figure out how to stop sharing. So, nope, that's new share. Stop share. How about the big stop share button?
Okay. Yeah. Well, yes, that's awesome. And being so dynamic. As the needs change, 412 is there on the ground coming up with great ideas. I think the bus stop thing is bloody brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, that's what kids are.
Yeah, they were talking about these distribution sites for the school lunches, but I was saying, what good is that going to do because so many kids take either school buses or public transportation, neither of which, the school buses aren't happening and public transportation is happening, but should be used an absolute minimum.
Right.
So the bus stop idea, I hope whoever thought that up got extra bonus points. Gold star. Yeah.
We've been, the whole team, I just shout out to the team. They've been working 7 days a week since it started. It's working days, working nights. It's pretty incredible the amount of effort that they've put in. Our whole team takes this personally.
Absolutely fantastic. When I've done food pickups for 412 since the very early days, back when I was texting you and stuff, but so often they're taken by the time I notice them. And I don't think I'd kept up to date with it, and I reinstalled it, and I must say the volunteers are really also coming through, because now I have the notifications. I turned the notifications back on, and it's like, I still haven't managed to catch one
Well,
because
starting next
it's like
week.
that.
And there was a lot of pent up demand. You know, I said, we actually stopped notifications. We shut off notifications for a while, and we're, personally matching donations with volunteers and sort of going back to the really old fashioned way. Since we turned the notifications back on, people have been really excited to jump in.
Yeah, that explains it, because I wasn't getting them, and sometimes I turn off my, I always put my phone on airplane at night, so. Yeah. I would turn it on in the morning, and it would have a notification, but oh no, that was an hour ago.
Well, starting this week and ramping up, we are going to have a lot of notifications, like a lot. If everybody could please help. I'm really not quite sure how we're going to distribute 20,000 boxes of food a week, but we're going to do it.
Yeah.
We need help to do that.
Well, thanks for making it possible. Any other folks have questions or comments on this? This was our last talk, so we can just let things evolve naturally if no one has particular questions. And Mark, by the way, thank you for your sweet slide. It's adorable.
Yes. Oh, see, I got all nervous, and I meant to congratulate you as the first thing I was going to say, but I was so hyped up to talk that.
Oh, you did. It was fantastic.
Thank you so much.
I've just been bringing together all these amazing people. I mean, I do other stuff, but with salons, they continue on the strength of the amazing doers and speakers that we have.
Maren, it's the least that I can do, and I think that once we're all gathered together, I think a proper celebration is in order.
Yeah, I was figuring that this month would just be like a party, but that ain't happening.
Yeah.
So we can raise a glass of, in this case, tea. In this case, empty. I used it up.
Hey, Maren, can I put in a pitch?
You bet.
For Online Town?
Oh, yes. You were mentioning that.
I don't know how many people have tried this, but for those of you who are tired of staring at Zoom all day, every day, there is another bit of software that is emergent. Hey, that is a celebratory thing.
There we go.
Woo! Chug, chug. Sip, sip.
Oh, that one. Oh, and I got the piece of cork.
I'm really curious to know, and I'm going to pop in a little invitation. There is a place that I have found that is fun online for people to gather that gives a little bit more of a physical sensation, not literally, but it's called Online Town, and it's kind of like Zoom in that you can go and you can video chat with people, but you get a little person and you can walk around with your person. And as you get closer to other people, your face and your voice show up louder and more visible for people near you. And as you walk away from them, your voice gets quieter and your screen dims from the people who are further away. So it basically gives a proximity notion to an online presence, and it allows for people to all gather in the same space, but then they can walk around and clump in little groups and sit in a chair or do whatever. And then the other thing is, and the room that I have posted is, you can see a link there. You can just go there, drop in and say hi, and I have to figure out there might be a password on it. I have to we'll stay in Zoom until you get in there.
Do you want to enter it?
Okay, go for it. Basically, there is a conference center where once you're in to this, you can choose the different rooms. One of them is a conference center, and you can choose the conference center. And if you do that one, there's a conference area, and everybody can gather and clump in little clumps there. But you can also go into the keynote room, where if you go in the keynote room and there's dozens and dozens and dozens of seats, you can go and sit there, and then only one person who goes up to the podium is visible to everybody in the chairs of the keynote room. And so it gives a one-to-many opportunity, but also a many-to-many opportunity, depending on what room you're sitting in.
It's kind of like gallery view. I do note there is a password needed, as Barbara also noticed.
And the password is